Hello guys, today you are going to watch what if Naruto and Sasuke time travel to the past, and please make sure leave a like and subscribe my channel. So now let's go to the video.
Almost finished after nearly 13 years of hard work. Leaning back in his chair, the tired Hokage looked at the picture on his desk. He had doubts about the completion of this moment because he had dreamed of it for so long. When he was finished, the seal would be more complex and superior to even the Hiraishin. Just then, the door to his office burst open, letting in a slew of shinobi. "Hokage-sama!" exclaimed the assembled crowd. "Please take it one at a time, and please stop that synchronized speaking. It's very unsettling. Team 7 has returned!" exclaimed the first shinobi. "What exactly is your point? I expected them to return from their C-ranked mission today. They failed the mission, and both Uchiha and Hitomi are critically injured. The doctors." The shinobi never finished as the Hokage vanished in a flash of yellow. He reappeared beside two young shinobi and turned his gaze to the others in the hospital room. "What happened, Minato and Kushina?" "We were ambushed, and then the client turned and attacked as well. It was a setup," Kushina snarled. "They were Iwagakure nins, all of them Jonin or higher, and they brought back up. It looked like they were all heading into battle with an enemy army." "Of course they were. Sensei was there. They needed an army to take him down. Don't you see, Kushina? They needed all of those nins to get Sensei like this, and they didn't even live to report their failure." Minato yelled angrily. "Minato, don't yell at your sister. She's as upset as you are, and what happened to Hitomi?" "Sorry, Dad," they both said, looking down. "And for what?" "Well, when they first attacked, we moved away, but Hitomi froze and we didn't notice." "I know you told us to protect her." "I'm sorry we didn't," Minato said quietly. Kushina burst into tears. "Are you insane?" "No, not at you," he said, sighing. The Jonin's eyes gradually opened. "What am I doing?" "Konoha, it appears that Kushina and Minato dragged you and Hitomi home by themselves." "Sorry, Dobi. I tried to protect them, but with that kind of force and more than 3/4 of my chakra sealed, I couldn't get to them quickly enough." "Teme. I told them when you returned that sealing your chakra would only be a liability. Of course, they didn't listen to me. If you could have used your Sharingans, Susanoo could have protected the Genins while you fought more effectively." Sasuke chuckled. Naruto always knew how to make someone realize how stupid their arguments were while insulting someone completely unrelated to the conversation. "Is it finished?" drew the attention of both depressed children. "At most another week, but now that it's almost finished, I'm not sure if I want to use it. What if I never have Hitomi, Minato, or Kushina?" "You sound desperate, Dobi. That's not like you. You'll get them again. You just have to move faster and be less dense this time." "But Teme." Before he could finish, the shinobi he'd left behind burst through his door, exasperated expressions on their faces. "Why do you always take off like that, Hokage-sama?" "Because I can," the room erupted in hysterical laughter. "Iwagakure has a force moving in this direction, and it's not small, not like last time." "I think they're serious this time," Naruto said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Kumogakure is also heading this way, and they have no intention of slowing down. Hokage-sama, the Raikage, is personally leading the charge." "Hokage-sama," said a doctor from the doorway. Naruto took one look at his face and knew exactly what he was about to say. They had the same expression when his triplets were born. I'm sorry, but Hitomi isn't going to make it through the night. If only Tsunade were here, the two younger shinobi sobbed. Do it, Dobi. There's plenty of time before they arrive. Finish it, and put an end to this never-ending cycle. What about Sanagakure? Have they thought about my proposal? The Kazekage sends his heartfelt condolences but refuses to get involved. How about Kirigakure? Well. To quote the Mizukage, tell him to shove his request for assistance up his ass, he sighed, looking away. Danzo had lost all treaties and allies since his crimes were made public. None of the countries were willing to sign again, leaving Konoha alone in the war. Fortunately for Konoha, while they refused to help him, they also refused to help them. I don't know what to do, Naruto admitted. Looking away, Sasuke flinched at Naruto's defeated expression. 14 years ago, as the Fourth War was coming to a close, Kumo and Iwa betrayed the alliance by launching an all-out assault on Konohagakure. It was at this point that Konoha's dirty laundry was exposed. It was also the point at which Konoha was alone. Itachi had worked so hard to keep wars at bay, and now that was all that remained. Tsunade was killed while attempting to prevent enemy forces from entering one of their medical camps. While this postponed the inevitable, it did not deter the enemy. Naruto was able to push them back using the Kyuubi's chakra at that point. He was appointed Rokudame after it was discovered that all of the other candidates had died. He and Hinata had married, and 9 months later they were starting a family. It was a joyous occasion. Then it turned into a nightmare for Naruto. During the delivery, Hinata began to bleed. Despite the best efforts of the doctors, she died shortly after the birth of Hitomi, the youngest of the triplets. Despite his loss, Naruto had worked hard to raise the family Hinata had left him. Many women flocked to him in an attempt to win his favor. Naturally, marrying the Hokage had numerous advantages. Naruto, on the other hand, could see right through them all, and none of them got their way. Of course, this enraged many of the women, but Sakura was the most affected. After failing to marry Sasuke, she attempted to marry Naruto, especially after his lineage was revealed to the public. Naruto became a god due to something as simple as his parents' identity. Sakura had been hurt by the rejection and attempted to assassinate Hitomi and her siblings when they were only a year old. She'd been stopped, arrested, and charged with treason. Everyone, especially Sakura, had expected Naruto to be lenient because she had been a friend. They were proven incorrect when Naruto ordered her public execution for her crimes. Many of the girls backed away when they realized Naruto would have little to no patience for those who attacked his family. Dobi, if you don't do that jutsu, I will never forgive you. We spent years on that technique. We combined every ounce of knowledge we could find into that thing. Everything I learned from Itachi, Orochimaru, and Obito. You poured everything from your endless imagination, Jiraiya's personal scrolls, Tsunade's personal scrolls, your father's scrolls, and your own inventions. Sasuke cursed as Naruto's head fell further. He struggled to sit up and tried in vain to get out of bed. Teme. What do you think you're doing? Yelled Naruto. If you're not going to do it, I'll do it. Get out of the way. He growled. Minato shook his head, pushed his injured sensei back to the bed, and turned to face his father. Let's ask Hitomi what she wants, okay? He reasoned. After a few moments, he nodded and entered the dying girl's room. Naruto knelt next to the bed and smiled softly at the shy girl. How are things going, sweetheart? I'm sorry. She sobbed. Naruto wiped his tears away, shaking his head. I froze when my first C-rank mission went wrong, remember? Of course, you said you were going to save Mom and that we could meet her when you were done. I'm afraid I won't be able to see you again if I do it. What if Hinata and I don't get along and I never get to see you again? Naruto had never been one to confide in his children, but he needed her help. Do it anyway. What if you save Konoha, stop the war, save Mom, and get us all at once? She suggested. You'll never know unless you try, you said when I was trying to learn the Juken. Okay sweetie, get some sleep. I'll see you when you wake up, okay? Naruto tried not to crack his voice. He knew she wouldn't be waking up at this hour. As she nodded and closed her eyes, he held back a sob as she took her final breath. Standing there, he knew what he had to do and that he couldn't do it alone. Teme, if I take you with me, will you help me change things? He asked, startling the injured Jonin in the doorway. Anything, Hokage-sama, he said. They knew there was no turning back at that point, and as predicted, the jutsu was completed quickly. By the end of the week, Sasuke could barely stand, and they had established the formula that was required in the village center. What they were about to do was obvious. Because they needed to expand their knowledge, they approached every shinobi for help, and the village was preparing a defensive barrier around them in case the attack began before they were finished. Are they all right, Konohamaru? Yeah. Gaara agreed to take them in even if he couldn't help us, but it's unfortunate that they can't see that you don't want to repeat past mistakes and intend to make amends for Danzo's actions. It's not just Danzo, Konohamaru. When they discovered that Tobi was actually Obito Uchiha, they felt an even stronger hatred for the village. Konoha had produced so many nins that had led the world to war that they lost all faith in not the village, but the nins of the village. I hope that I can prevent that from happening. It's time. Naruto stood as he and Sasuke nodded. As the villagers cleared the sealing formula's center, Sasuke and Naruto began a long complex string of over 500 hand seals each. The jutsu was one of a kind and required synchronicity. Teaching Sasuke the hand seals alone in a week was nearly impossible, as was finishing the technique. Fortunately, he had proven himself to be a genius by remembering them all without the use of his Sharingans. The gates exploded just as the last 20 seals were being performed, and the village was flooded with enemy shinobi. Naruto continued the jutsu by forcing himself to ignore his surroundings. It was difficult for him because every nerve in his body begged him to stop and protect his village. Sasuke, on the other hand, was fighting himself for different reasons. He was completely exhausted. He had refused to sleep for the past week in order to learn the technique. Naruto approaching him for assistance was something he had not anticipated. He had thought that teaching and protecting his family was the best he could do after everything he had done to the blonde enigma. Then, after failing to protect the youngest of the three, he assumed Naruto had lost faith in the Uchiha. He didn't want to let Naruto down again, so he fought tooth and nail to learn the technique in time. The Raikage and the Tsuchikage froze as they passed through the village gates, seeing the formula elaborately painted on the ground and the two most feared shinobi inside finishing the last of the hand seals. What do you think you're doing? Demanded the Raikage, not expecting an answer. Naruto grinned as the final seal was broken. See you later, eh? Don't even think about researching the seal because it will be destroyed in 30 seconds. Heaven's decree, fate reversal. As the words came out of Naruto's mouth, everyone in the village, enemy and ally alike, stared in fascination. The seal had begun to glow, and almost simultaneously the seals on Sasuke's Sharingans and chakra, as well as Naruto's Shikafuin and 8 tetragrams seal shattered. As the chakra exploded outwards, their bodies began to disintegrate, and a mass of energy began to rise in the air. What happened to me? Naruto sighed and sat up, holding his head. That would be the jutsu you used to transport yourself back in time, Kit. The Kyuubi shot back. Naruto, shakily standing, cursed as he saw the date. Wonderful final exams. I have a pounding migraine, no idea how well I'll work in my younger, weaker body, and no idea how I should approach this now that I know what to expect. That would be your fault for failing to plan ahead of time. I couldn't plan ahead of time. I didn't know where the jutsu would take me. All I know is that it would be a time when I existed and could handle the memories and chakra that came back with me. Is it still possible for me to use your chakra? Is that something I'll have to work up to again? I'll be able to tell you more when you're fully recovered. By the way, you're going to be late at this rate. No way. Naruto yelled as he ran, as fast as he could, from his apartment to school. Mentally, he hoped Sasuke was having a better time than he was. Across the village, another lone figure sat up, groaning and rubbing the back of his head. It was successful. Good. What am I doing? Oh, my training ground. According to the placement of the shuriken over there and the equipment I have on me, I am close to graduating from the academy. Sasuke exercised while massaging his head. He smiled at himself after a split second. He had perfected his timing and jutsu to pull it off. Wincing, he cursed as he looked at the position of the sun. He knew he'd be late. Well, I suppose if I need to, I can use my near godlike status that they have bestowed upon me. It will take some time to adjust to this. I need to get to the academy. I'll try to iron out some of the details over lunch with the Hokage. Sasuke cursed as he froze in mid-step. I'm going to have to be careful not to say that to him. Naruto and Sasuke met on their way to the academy. They only had to look at each other once to realize that they were both suffering from migraines. Snickering, they accelerated and began racing to the academy. Their rivalry had been rekindled in some ways. They both gave Iruka and Mizuki sheepish looks as they burst through the door. I apologize, Iruka-sensei. I was assisting the Dobi in his aim. I'm not sure if it's gotten any better. Sasuke explained quickly, knowing Naruto would pick up on the excuse to keep him out of trouble. Keep an eye on it, Teme. I was doing well until you startled me by yelling that we would be late. After all, who gets up at 4 a.m. to practice kunai and shuriken? Naruto huffed in a manner befitting of his youth. Iruka groaned, shaking his head. Please take your seats, but please be more mindful of the time next time. He lectured, and both of the boys nodded. Now that everyone has arrived, we can begin the final exam. This exam will be divided into sections. The first will be an academic knowledge test. This will determine whether or not you have been paying attention to my lectures over the years, and accuracy will follow. Your kunai and shuriken technique will be tested. Following that will be a taijutsu test. This is a tournament-style test in which you will spar with each other, your performance will be carefully monitored, and you will be graded based on your performance. Your parents have also been invited to watch the tournament, so don't act silly. After that, we'll take a break for lunch. You will be tested on genjutsu and then ninjutsu immediately after lunch. Have any questions? Does the tournament winner get extra credit for winning, Iruka-sensei? One student of civilian origin inquired. No, the tournament winner will not receive additional credit. Dang. Are there any more questions? Then we'll get started. Kyuubi, is it possible for me to communicate with Sasuke mentally? I need to ask him a question, but drawing a seal or using Anbu hand seals would be too obvious. I can try to make a connection between his Sharingans and you. Thanks. Meanwhile, Sasuke flew through the written exam. It had been simple the first time, and even simpler the second. Sasuke? Hokage-sama? You know how I feel when you call me that. Besides, you'll have to get used to not calling me that. I'm aware of that. I'm making an effort. Did you require anything? If that's what you want, I won't help you with the test. Damn you, Teme. Do you think I should fail again and have the same team, or should I try and risk us being separated? That's a good question. If you fail, you will have to work harder to maintain any gains in your ability to a reasonable level, which may jeopardize our mission. At the same time, not being on the same team would be a hindrance. I say trust your instincts. They have never failed you. Thank you, Teme. The written ended faster than Naruto remembered, but that could be because he wasn't as nervous. Naruto yawned as they walked outside to line up for their accuracy test. So we'll go with the whole I was concealing my true ability to keep myself safe ploy? That does sound like a good idea. Besides, when I said we had been training this morning, I technically laid the groundwork for that. That's an excellent point. Thank you for accompanying me, Sasuke. It's the least I could do for you, Dobi. I'm just trying to make up for my mistakes after all of the trouble I've caused, you know? You've already shown temerity. You nearly died saving my children, you've spent every waking moment since your return helping me in the village, and you agreed to return to a time when your demons were still alive. There is nothing to be sorry for. Perhaps not in your eyes, Dobi, but plenty in mine. As Naruto approached the line, he weighed the kunai and shuriken, noting that they felt much heavier than they should. Teme Mizuki is attempting to rig the examinations. I might need some assistance. If I'm going to have any chance of getting these to the target, I'm going to have to use my chakra to boost my throw. I'll cover if necessary. Just don't use too much. I'll try, but you already know I have control issues at my age. Issues? Experiment with none. Naruto pouted and threw the kunai with the least amount of chakra he could muster. Fortunately, the kunai and shuriken were just embedded deeper than usual. The entire courtyard gaped. When he was usually lucky to hit half, the dead last had just gotten a perfect score. Would you take a look at that? He did get better. Sasuke made a playful remark. I told you I'd do it. Naruto responded in jest. The accuracy test ended similarly to the first time. Then came the tournament. Looking around, Naruto and Sasuke noticed a few things they hadn't noticed before. Like the potential Jonins lurking in the wings, watching them. Smirking, Naruto gave Sasuke a look that said, let's put on a good show for them. Sasuke and Naruto nodded and took their places among the other students. Everyone except Kakashi and Hinata, however, missed their exchange. Interesting that they're already in sync, Kakashi remarked. How close are you and Sasuke, Naruto-kun? Hinata inquired quietly. Alright, the first match will pit Hinata against Amy, Iruka said as the girls took their seats. Hinata was tense. Her father was watching, and she knew she was going to make a mistake. Amy, on the other hand, was certain. She knew she could win with just one little taunt. Why do I have to fight the mouse, Iruka-sensei? I could hurt her. She inquired. Hinata bowed her head in shame. She was usually defeated by Amy. Despite her civilian birth, the girl had a mean streak and was a bully. Amy is reading the comments. That is not required. Iruka forewarned. Hinata, don't listen to her. She's just afraid you'll beat her. So she's launching a verbal assault. If you believe in yourself, you can win the whole thing. Naruto smirked and yelled. She had done quite well the last time he had encouraged her. Hopefully she will this time as well. Hinata raised her head, smiled at Naruto, and took her stance. Naruto-kun believes I can do it. He'd never hit the target before, but he did today. That demonstrates that people can change. That means I can do it. Amy wasn't the only one who was taken aback by the abrupt change in behavior. Neji, Hanabi, and Hiyashi were also present. It was difficult to tell in Haishi's case. She appears to be inspired by the Jinchuriki. Perhaps I've been approaching her training incorrectly. Hiyashi thought to himself. The match itself didn't last long, and Hinata defeated Amy for the first time. As she exited the ring, her smile was as bright as the sun, leaving a fuming bully behind. See, I told you all you had to do was believe in yourself. Naruto replied with a big smile. Under his mask, Kakashi smiled up in his hiding place. Perhaps I do have a particular team in mind after all. Thank you very much, and Naruto-kun. For what purpose? Reminding you that the only person who can truly hold you back is yourself. Hinata, you knew it the whole time. Naruto was beaming on the inside. He vowed that he would be more aware of Hinata this time. He would be there for her this time, and nothing would happen to her. Because there weren't many girls, the matches moved quickly. All too soon, only 4 girls remained. Sakura, Ino, Hinata, and another civilian girl are among those who have joined the ranks. Each one had performed admirably and had surprised the audience in some way, though it wasn't all positive. Many questioned the education that the kunoichi were receiving if that was their average skill level. Sakura quickly lost her match to Hinata due to insufficient preparation, and Ino won hers just as quickly. The final match was between 2 of the more rational kunoichi. Ino's face split into a huge grin as they faced each other. So you just needed a little more motivation, nay? She inquired. Hinata blushed and nodded, but that was the extent of her response. When Iruka signaled for the match to begin, neither player moved. Each is waiting for the other to take the initiative. Hinata was content to wait. During her fights, she discovered that she fought better when she reacted to an attack rather than initiating one. Ino, on the other hand, was not so patient. When she realized Hinata wouldn't move, she attacked and quickly avoided a palm strike. She jumped back, noticing a faint smile on the heiress face. Smirking, she attacked once more, instigating a series of attacks that fell flat. As the match progressed, with each girl dodging the other, it became clear who would win. The Yamanaka clan concentrated on long-distance abilities, leaving close-range attacks to the Akamichi clan. In contrast, the Hyuga clan specialized in close-range combat. Hinata had been trained in this skill since she was a child. Hinata took advantage of Ino's late realization that she had left her side open. She was out for the count after 1 strike. It took a few moments for it to sink in after Iruka called the match, but Hinata's face lit up with delight when she realized she had won the tournament. At least on the girls' side. She didn't usually last that long. When she turned around, she noticed Naruto's big sunny smile and nearly bounced out of the ring to give the boys their turn. In the stands, Hiyashi allowed himself a rare smile in response to Hinata's performance. Maybe that will work after all. He plotted. Neji scowled next to him. Hinata's abrupt change in performance contradicted everything he believed. It was a fluke, he reasoned to himself. Hanabi, on the other hand, was perplexed as well as proud of her sister. Nei-chan has never shown that kind of progress before, she reflected. However, the boys' half of the tournament became the talk of the town. Naruto quickly advanced through the first round, defeating another boy who constantly taunted him. Everyone watching, including the Hokage, was taken aback by how quickly he completed the feat. Sasuke progressed as expected, albeit at a faster rate. Shikamaru and Choji, true to form, both forfeited at the same time, refusing to fight one another. Kiba easily defeated his opponent as well. Expected from a taijutsu-focused clan. Shino finished his match only a fraction slower than the rest of the group. Even so, it was more than anyone had expected from a clan that preferred to fight with Kikai. Naruto faced off against Kiba in the second round, which was a little different. "Are you prepared to lose, Naruto?" Kiba mocked. Naruto had always had the most difficulty fighting him and Sasuke out of all the students. Naruto simply slipped into his normal taijutsu stance, or one of the styles he had learned after becoming Hokage, when he realized that the taijutsu he had learned from the toads wasn't as effective if he didn't use his senjutsu. The match is already over if the Dobi uses that style. Sasuke made a remark that drew everyone's attention. Only Ino dared to inquire. Which style? The dragon look. A very old style that relies on unpredictability to defeat all opponents. The style was unknown until Madara Uchiha learned and employed it frequently. He preferred it to the Uchiha clan's Interceptor Fist. While it was never documented as a clan style because the elders disapproved of it, no one else attempted to learn it. People who could hear him were taken aback. So why not? If it's that powerful, why not try to learn it? Shikamaru inquired. It is said that the style chooses who learns it and that most people will never learn, let alone master it. I don't think Madara ever mastered the style. I attempted to learn it, but it didn't make sense to me, and the forms didn't flow as they should. The Dobi, on the other hand, appears to have been born knowing the style. Sasuke responded. I still believe the Baka has no chance. Sakura sighed. On the same day, she had been humiliated by both Naruto, the class clown and dead last, and Hinata, the wallflower and pushover. Well, Pinky, contrary to popular belief, the Dobi has already won this match. Sasuke abruptly broke character. Sakura drew back, as if bitten. Nobody had ever heard Sasuke speak to anyone in that way before. Let alone one of his adoring fans. Kiba, who had heard the entire exchange, also huffed. I don't care what style you use, this match is mine. He exclaimed. Naruto simply shrugged. Whatever you want to believe. If the game does not begin, we will never know who won. He answered calmly. Guy's jaw had dropped in the stands. Dragon fashion. I never imagined I'd live to see this most youthful style revived. In awe, he exclaimed. Iruka began the match before anyone could ask what he was talking about. Kiba charged in, as he had in all of his previous fights with Naruto, a strategy that had always worked for him, only to be grabbed and thrown across the arena, landing on his ass. Whatever Sasuke says, that was jujitsu. One of the boys exclaimed. It was. The dragon style incorporates elements from all taijutsu styles. Jujitsu is no different. Sasuke educated the audience. Kiba took a cautious step forward and looked at Naruto, who had already taken a different stance. This time, however, it was Naruto who attacked, and it was the fight's final attack. When Naruto's open palm collided with Kiba's nose, he was thrown backwards out of the ring, and everyone heard the distinct sound of bones breaking. Naruto shook his head as he relaxed his gaze on Kiba. "Kibbles, you've been using that same strategy against me for 4 years now. Did you really think I'd fall for it?" Everyone in the room burst out laughing as they realized Kiba's new moniker. Iruka began the next match proud of his surrogate brother while Kiba was fuming. He has truly improved. However, I have never heard of anyone improving so rapidly. Is he concealing his true strength? Instead of the choppy, almost forced, and exaggerated movements he usually displayed, his movements flowed together perfectly. Shino's match was ended by Sasuke. He had managed to compel the bug user to demonstrate more skill than he had intended. The other fights were mediocre until Sasuke and Naruto were left standing. They smirked at each other and took their usual sparring stances. Sasuke in his lion form, and Naruto in his self-created kitsune form. "Well, then, Dobi, let the best man win." In response, Naruto simply smirked. "I plan to." They met in the middle of the arena as soon as Iruka called for the match to begin, trading blows that were mostly invisible to almost everyone watching. Each blow is redirected or countered. None of the attacks made contact. Iruka couldn't believe what he was seeing. Naruto had never lasted 30 seconds against Sasuke, and now he was fighting him blow for blow. The adults couldn't keep their jaws from dropping to the floor, and even Haishi's usual stone fa section aide fell to show his shock. For those who knew what they were looking at and could see it, the two academy students in front of them were fighting at a level well above Genin and closer to Jonin. How is this even possible? They all wondered. Sasuke and Naruto traded blows for nearly 20 minutes, neither giving an inch until Sasuke felt the exhaustion from his study sessions kick in. While he was physically rested, he had brought with him mental exhaustion. This caused him to overextend on a punch, which Naruto took advantage of. After a punch to the stomach and a kick to the chin, he was laying on his back outside the boundaries, cursing himself for being so tired. The audience was silent as they processed what they had just witnessed. The Academy's last runner-up had just defeated the presumptive Rookie of the Year. Naruto smiled as he assisted Sasuke to his feet. "I'm exhausted, Sasuke, because we studied far too hard. I simply deal with it better now that I'm used to it. Don't beat yourself up about it, okay?" Iruka wasn't sure he could handle any more surprises. They had done it while tired? Naruto had arrived at school exhausted many times before. Sasuke nodded and smiled at Naruto. "We'll have to try again later. That is the longest we have traveled while remaining in the same location." Laughing, Naruto enthusiastically nodded. Then he looked around, sheepishly laughing. "I believe we broke them." Sasuke laughed as he nodded. "Well, whatever." Iruka called the game and then dismissed everyone for lunch as soon as he got his bearings straight. Kakashi couldn't help but suspect that the two were concealing something significant in the back of the room. Hinata also suspected something was wrong because Naruto and Sasuke had never fought on that level before, and she knew Naruto never sparred with Sasuke, so they couldn't have known each other's moves that well. Whoever impersonates Naruto-kun will regret it. She made a vow. Hinata and Kakashi followed Naruto and Sasuke to a small clearing in the forest near the academy that they had discovered after the war. Because of their exhaustion, neither time traveler noticed the other. They sighed as they fell to the ground. "So, what now? We've already made some changes. For one, your performance. I know Kakashi-sensei will be suspicious because he was watching. I honestly believe Hinata would have noticed if anyone else had. We need a more concrete plan, Sasuke said, rubbing his brow. I understand, but it's difficult to think on an empty stomach and with a pounding headache. Did our storage seals survive? Naruto sat up a little straighter. Sasuke rolled his eyes and removed his arm warmers. Fortunately, the seals were still present. They began eating their food after unwrapping some bentos from one and a medicine kit from the other. For once, Sasuke agreed that food made everything better. After finishing the bentos and taking some pain relievers for their migraines, they sighed and felt some of the exhaustion lift. Kakashi and Hinata were struggling to hear what they were saying from a distance. They could both read lips, but they needed their dojutsu to do so, and revealing them would risk alerting the two they were keeping an eye on. For starters, I believe we should create a timeline of what needs to change in order to be better prepared for Obito's temper tantrum. Hopefully, we'll be able to dismantle the Akatsuki before they start removing the Biju this time. Naruto revealed his own storage seals by rolling up his sleeves. They began by unwrapping some scrolls, ink, and a brush. Haku and Zabuza would be extremely useful in the fight. Zabuza was already an A-rank shinobi, so with a little more training, he should be able to fight the Akatsuki. As a result, we'll have to make sure we get the Nami mission again. Perhaps we should try to snag a few more C-rank missions so that our teammate, please don't let it be Sakura or Kiba, has the necessary experience for the Chunin exams. We were woefully unprepared. We need to get you into your ancestors' estates. I know you studied your father's scrolls, but those were the only ones that survived Nagato's attack and were kept in the Hokage vault. We need the rest of his research as well as your Uzumaki clan scrolls. I also need to finish reading through the clan's scrolls. I was only an eighth of the way through when I left Konoha, and when I returned, they had either been confiscated or destroyed. We'll need anything and everything we can get our hands on. Sasuke started. Naruto quickly nodded, drawing a timeline of what had happened in notes underneath as they were brought up about how they needed to change. They were also making notes on the side about what they needed to do to make the changes. What are your plans to deal with Orochimaru's continued pursuit of your Sharingans? Kill him in the forest, capture and question him, or simply prevent the Heaven Seal?
Naruto inquired.
Sasuke took a seat back. Depends on whether you believe you can teach me Senjutsu, and if so, will there be enough time for me to master it as you have? Otherwise, I recommend getting the seal and having you modify it. That way, he won't be able to control me, I won't abandon Konoha again, and I'll have a source of Senjutsu without having to rely on Susanoo. Sasuke pondered. Humming Naruto sat back and nodded after a moment. We'll make that decision based on how far you've progressed with your Senjutsu training by the time the exams begin. When it comes to exams, we have Gaara to deal with. Should I approach him and repair his seal before the exams? I could ask him to continue acting insane. At the same time, I could give him a condensed version of why. Should I wait and just try to keep Lee from getting hurt? That is a difficult one. Lee's injuries, I believe, made him a better person who valued his abilities more than before. At the same time, it would be difficult to simply stand there and watch as his limbs were crushed once more. What do you know about it? You were already unconscious as a result of the sealing. Naruto mocked. Sasuke couldn't help but stick his tongue out, despite his physical age. After a few seconds of shock, the two burst out laughing. Meanwhile, the two spies tried to get closer so they could hear them better or at least see the scroll. The invasion must be modified. We can't afford to lose all of our shinobi. But I couldn't care less about Sandame. Naruto hissed loudly. He had been fine until he discovered that the Sandaime had hidden his lineage from him. He realized why. He had given it some thought and had come to terms with how he had handled the massacre. What he couldn't bear were the lies he'd been told about his lack of living relatives. The way the Sandaime had allowed him to live in the condemned apartment building. How the Sandaime turned a blind eye to the village's treatment of him and the obvious sabotage in the academy. He discovered this after becoming Hokage and began going through the files left behind by his predecessors. The discovery that the so-called god of shinobi had let Uzu fall when he could have helped was the final nail in the coffin that shattered any trust or faith he had left in the old man. His family had been slaughtered because the Sandaime permitted it. If the Sandaime had sent reinforcements, they could have evacuated and helped move the civilians to Konoha. Instead, he had refused to send any aid at all, allowing hundreds of innocent people to perish because he was a jerk. When Sasuke looked over at his leader and friend, he knew what he was thinking. His family had also been slaughtered as a result of Sandaime's decision, albeit with a different tool. He couldn't care less about the old man, but he needed to calm him down before he started leaking the fox's chakra. "Can you please calm down, Dobi?" he muttered. The sixth fire shadow slumped in his spot and took a deep breath, blurring. What were we doing? The invasion, as well as the old fool. We were debating what we should do about it. If we kill or capture Orochimaru in the forest, the invasion may be averted. Simultaneously, we risk Kabuto or Kimimaro orchestrating the invasion in his place. Sasuke pondered. Kimi is too ill to lead the invasion, and Kabuto would never do something so audacious at this point. He'd wait and probably repeat the same experiments on himself in the future. We must also find a way to prevent the Edo Tensei from being used again, as it was a living hell. Naruto responded. This was getting complicated. He rubbed his temples. As a result, our response to the invasion will be determined by the forest. Tsunade must return in any case. Before the Akatsuki moves, we need a medic program in place, as well as competent field medics, and we must ensure that the old drunk does not make Sakura her apprentice again. To make that decision, she had to be more than just wasted. It was obvious that Hinata or even Ino would have been a better choice. Sasuke bemoaned the fact that he had made Naruto laugh. He had to agree at the same time. Making Sakura her apprentice had been a terrible mistake. Jiraiya must also get his act together. They both need to get back into peak physical condition. They let themselves go far too easily. Naruto snarled. They're at least in their 60s, Dobi. They won't be able to get back into shape. The blonde was reminded by Sasuke. Yes, they can. He sang. The raven-haired time traveler began to be concerned about his companion's mental health. He returned to the list, shaking his head. We need to get the rookies ready. They were also woefully unprepared. Particularly Choji and Shikamaru. It took Asuma's death for them to take the world seriously, and a war for Choji to realize that sometimes fighting your friend is the best thing you can do for them. Ino needs to change her attitude as soon as possible. So far, we've mostly gotten up to your training trip with Jiraiya. Sasuke made a remark. We can make changes as needed. We had better get back to the academy. We should also sit down and make plans for the 3-year break and afterwards, just in case. Naruto stated that he was rolling the scroll up and resealing everything. Standing, the two turned and returned to the academy, their two watchers shrinking back so they wouldn't be noticed. Both Kakashi and Hinata cursed under their breath as they returned, realizing they had heard nothing of value and had only added to the confusion. As Hinata returned, she noticed that the Jonin had not noticed her. As everyone settled into their seats in the classroom, Iruka couldn't help but smile as she looked over at the Genin candidates. With a few exceptions, they were doing fantastic. Naruto, Hinata, and Sasuke, on the other hand, were outperforming everyone's expectations. Naruto in particular. He couldn't figure out how he'd kept so much talent hidden for so long. The primary test would be ninjutsu. Mizuki, on the other hand, was enraged. The demon sailed through with flying colors. He'd never be able to trick him into stealing the scroll at this rate, unless he could still use his desire to become Hokage against him. Okay, everyone, we'll now get into the genjutsu portion of the exam. When your name is called, you will proceed to the next room, and once you have completed the genjutsu portion, you will immediately proceed to the ninjutsu. In there, you will receive your final grade, as well as your headband and final instructions. Questions? Iruka began the exams by calling everyone in alphabetical order when no one raised their hand. So far, no one had failed, which was to be expected given the abysmal test and curriculum. Naruto was startled awake by Ino as Iruka called his name again. Did I fall asleep? He groggily inquired. Duh, Ino said. He stood up and followed Iruka out of the room, shrugging. As soon as the door closed, he flared his chakra and released a very fine yet powerful chakra pulse that washed over the room and village, dispelling every genjutsu it was hit by. He cursed mentally while blushing. I felt that, Dobi. Was it necessary for you to use so much chakra? Sasuke inquired via their link. I didn't intend to. I was trying to keep it under control as much as possible while using as little as possible. He answered sheepishly. What was that, Naruto? Iruka inquired. It was a chakra pulse, I believe. I tried another method because I was having so much trouble stopping my chakra flow in order to cancel the genjutsu. Instead of stopping my chakra, I send out a wave that disrupts the caster's chakra and allows the genjutsu to be released. But I'm still having issues with it. I believe I hit the entire village with it. If the appropriate amount of chakra is applied, any genjutsu struck by the wave is released. He elaborated. Iruka's mouth dropped open. That had never occurred to him as a possibility. Nonetheless, the technique was designed and developed entirely by an academy student. He marked Naruto's passing grade with a shake of his head and looked up, only to see the potted plant from the classroom 2 doors down vanish and Naruto take its place in a flawless substitution. I'm looking forward to seeing the transformation in the Bunshin. Nodding, Naruto transformed into a perfect replica of his father, Yondaime. As Naruto cancelled the technique, Iruka shook his head. Can it be any clone jutsu or just the one taught in the academy, Iruka? Naruto inquired. Anyway, why the question? I'm still having issues with the Bunshin. I can do it, but I make far too many, and it's difficult to keep them all inside. As a result of Sasuke lending me the scroll, I learned about another type of clone. So I was wondering if I could just use the one I know how to do. Proceed with caution. There are no rules requiring it to be the Bunshin no Jutsu. As 3 fire clones materialized, Naruto smirked and nodded. There was not a single hand seal used. Naruto is perfect. You are successful. Iruka smiled. How come you waited so long? The other 2 graduating classes did not appeal to me. I wouldn't have worked well with any of their teams, but this one has a lot of people I can work with, so I figured I'd pass the time. He cheated. Iruka nodded and informed Naruto that he would have to return in a week to receive his placement. He nodded and exited the room as Iruka called Ino in. Outside, he quickly met up with Sasuke and they began their journey to the Uchiha estate. Hinata and Kakashi are following once more. Naruto, on the other hand, detected them this time. "Teme, we have a few stray cats following us. Do you believe they can smell food on us?" he inquired casually. "Maybe. Dobi, they probably think you're a fish cake because of the way you eat ramen and your name is Naruto." Sasuke responded. Naruto sighed as they entered the complex and made their way to the clan library. As the door closed, Hinata whined as she walked home, vowing to learn their secrets the next day. Kakashi considered his actions before proceeding to the tower. Granted, he would be early, but he also needed to ensure that he had his team. He had never requested a specific team before, and he wanted to make sure he got the one he wanted. That was very close. "I believe they had followed us earlier. But I was too tired to notice." "Do you think they heard anything?" "Do not believe it, Dobi. We were too far away, and there were few places to hide in the clearing. They might not have read our lips because they used their chakra." Sasuke responded. They nodded and began working on reading the jutsu that the Uchiha clan had stocked up that matched their primary affinity. It would be a difficult task, but it would be worthwhile. Naruto left the Uchiha clan compound around midnight, still suffering from a headache. He'd read far too many books. Sasuke returned to Konoha and assisted Naruto with his memorization skills, refusing to let Naruto stop until he had a photographic memory. He had cursed a lot during the process, but he was grateful for it now. "There you are, Naruto. Can we talk for a second?" From behind him, a voice called out. He raised an eyebrow at the Chunin and nodded tentatively. "Do you think he'll try to get me to steal the scroll again?" he inquired of his tenant. "Most probably. But I consider it a blessing in disguise. You get to capture a nuke nin, steal the scroll, get another look at the Edo Tensei, and possibly make a complete copy before turning it in," said the fox. "What exactly did you require, Mizuki-sensei?" Naruto inquired. "I was paying close attention to your exam, Naruto, and to be honest, I believe you would be squandering your abilities as a genin. So I wanted to offer you the opportunity to take an advanced placement exam and skip straight to Chunin." He lied with ease. Is Teme being given the opportunity? No. He still has issues from what happened that prevent him from taking the exam. You, on the other hand, have no reason not to take it. Naruto cocked his head to the side, as if thinking about the offer. What would I be required to do? I won't be able to tell you unless you decide to take the exam. There is no pressure if you fail. You will still receive your assignments in a week and no harm will be done. Okay. Please tell me. Naruto lied about his enthusiasm. Mizuki smiled. Line, hook, and sinker. Sneak into the Hokage's office and steal the forbidden scroll. Don't worry, he's taking the exam. After that, all you have to do is flee and keep the scroll for 3 hours while being pursued. This is a typical Chunin mission. As an added bonus, you'll learn a jutsu from it. Mizuki told the boy about the test. Where should I go? You pass early if you can get the scroll to this location while keeping it safe within the time limit and learn a jutsu. However, you must demonstrate the jutsu and get the scroll there unscathed. Mizuki explained, pulling a map from his hip pouch and displaying it to the eager genin. Naruto beamed, nodding in excitement. When will the exam begin? It all starts now. Best wishes." As the boy took off, he snickered. "I'll just alert people about a half hour after he leaves the tower. Not only will I be permitted to kill the demon, but I will also be able to leave the village and travel to Orochimaru-sama." Naruto snuck into the office and quickly swapped the scroll for a convincing fake before slipping back out and into the forest. It was similar, except he was in and out before the Sandaime could find him. He also set a trap for Mizuki. He'll go around telling everyone that the scroll was stolen, only to look like a fool when the Sandaime checks and finds it still there. He sat down in a different clearing and instructed his shadow clones to practice the safer jutsu he didn't already know. Meanwhile, he was dissecting the Edo Tensei. He knew there had to be a way to stop the jutsu, but he had no idea how. After sealing the scroll and dismissing his clones, he headed to the clearing mentioned by Mizuki after nearly 3 hours. Mizuki was looking a little disheveled. "What happened, Mizuki-sensei?" Naruto pretended to be concerned. Mizuki had yelled. He hadn't expected Naruto to swap the scroll for a convincing dummy. The Sandaime initially mistook him for drunk or delirious, but upon his insistence, he checked the scroll and discovered it blank. Unfortunately, instead of blaming the demon, they blamed him for the theft, despite the fact that he had just spent nearly 2.5 hours fleeing shinobi. Nothing related to Naruto. Only a portion of the exam. Where is the scroll now? What scroll? He inquired innocently, just as a swarm of ninja appeared in the surrounding trees, much to Naruto's delight. Mizuki was completely unaware of their presence. The ninja, including Iruka, kept a close eye on the exchange. "The scroll for your examination," Mizuki yelled. "Which exam?" "The one who will get you promoted to Chunin. You were supposed to bring it here early so it could pass." He expressed some concern. "I'm not sure what you're on about. I came out here because I couldn't sleep and needed to practice my clone jutsu. I was concerned when I saw you here looking bruised." He pretended to be unaware. "That one I told you about. The one with the word, 'forbidden,' written on it." Mizuki was completely enraged. He was well aware that the demon had taken the scroll. He'd seen him leave the tower with it. "Do you have a fever, Mizuki-sensei? Or are you inebriated?" Innocently, Naruto inquired. Mizuki growled and yanked the Fuma shuriken from his back, abandoning the act. "So I decided to take the easy route. Tell me where the forbidden sealing scroll is, and I'll only take one of your legs." He made a threat. Naruto stood motionless. "I'm still not sure what you're on about. What exactly is the forbidden sealing scroll? After all, if it's forbidden, doesn't that mean it's off limits to everyone?" "Brat. Tell me where it is, and I'll explain why everyone despises you." He attempted to reason. Naruto examined his nails, as if inspecting them. "Because I have a 500-foot-tall 9-tailed fox stuck in my stomach, which everyone appears to be mistaking for me because sheeple believe whatever they are told. Or is it because my birth allegedly killed the Yondaime? Maybe it's because I was born on the same day that a lot of people died as a result of that giant fox? Choose your poison. I suppose they're all true. I was born on the day the fox was sealed away. The fox is sealed within me, and the Yondaime did die, sealing the fox within me. So, what could there possibly be?" Naruto did a deadpan. Mizuki took a step back. How could he be aware of the fox? Everyone in the trees was thinking the same thing. "How did you find out?" "I talked to a psychic, and they said that the stars were aligned in a very ominous way on the day I was born, so that must mean that the fox was sealed inside me because seriously, where else could a giant fox go? He groaned as he looked at Mizuki's expression of disbelief. I have a strange tattoo on my stomach that appears only when I use chakra. People refer to me as a demon, a fox, a Kyuubi, and a Kyuubi kid. I was born on the day the fox attacked. According to legend, the Yondaime used a powerful kinjutsu to defeat, rather than kill, the fox. Fuinjutsu was the Yondaime's specialty, and I have a brain that I use every day. Naruto summarized. Mizuki threw the shuriken, and before the spectators could intercept it, Naruto shot forward, dodged the shuriken, and caught Mizuki in the chin with his foot. As soon as the kick connected, Naruto realized he had put far too much power behind it. Mizuki jumped off his hands and landed back where he started, flinching slightly as his head snapped back at a very bad angle, obviously broken. He shook his head, looking down at Mizuki's body. Traitors are among the most heinous people on the planet. The penalty for betraying your village is death. Treason is committed by attacking another shinobi in good standing. Your attempt to obtain a clearly labeled, forbidden, scroll was yet another act of treason. It irritated me that you blamed me for your stupidity, and I know you're still in the trees. You should probably come out. Many people's eyes widened in surprise when Naruto called out. Naruto yawned and stretched as the ninja fell into the clearing. He desperately needs to sleep. Are you all right, Naruto? Iruka inquired cautiously. Sure. Why should I not be? It was either me or him, and to be honest, I value my life far too much for the answer to be him. In addition, I believe I am in the shock phase. It won't hit me until I get some more sleep. So, may I return home? Naruto murmured. Do you know where the forbidden scroll of sealing is, Uzumaki? Be truthful. One of the ninja inquired. Naruto turned to face the shinobi. I understand you're just doing your job, but why do people keep asking me that? Do you want me to ask a psychic? I have no idea what a forbidden scroll of sealing is. Particularly where it is. If I had to guess, I'd say it's in the Hokage's possession, where it'll be safe. He exploded. Bring Mizuki's body to T&I. Make them do a mental walk. Make certain that they find the scroll. It contains far too many secrets to give to someone else. Kit, what about his memories of persuading you to buy the scroll? Or him noticing you leave? My friend, seals. They will never discover my link to the scroll. He responded. Naruto jogged out of the clearing and back to his apartment as soon as he received permission to leave. Halfway there, he encountered an unexpected stumbling block. Can you tell me who you are and where Naruto-kun is? Tell me who you are and where Naruto-kun is? A pair of enraged Byakugans glared at him, and his future wife stood ready to attack. Naruto swallowed. Ah, Hinata-chan, you see the problem is. Naruto swallowed. This was so dissimilar to the Hinata that he realized he had no idea how to handle the situation. As the kunoichi narrowed her eyes and prepared to attack, Naruto realized he had to act. Ah, Hinata-chan, I swear I'm Naruto, and can we talk about this in a non-violent way? Please? He begged. Where is Naruto-kun? She asked again. Groaning, Naruto sighed, knowing there was no getting out of this conversation. Hinata-chan, I can explain everything, but not here. The fewer people who know, the better. Anyway, I really need to sleep, so why not my house? He proposed. The kunoichi growled slightly, but her stance relaxed slightly. Naruto grumbled at his tenant as he led her back to his house. This stinks. I didn't have time to think about what I was going to say to her. Well, it stinks to be you. You're being followed by her ever-faithful retainer, by the way. You should probably do something about it. Naruto groaning spun, grabbed Hinata's hand, and sped away as soon as his smoke bomb landed. A regular smoke bomb would never have affected a Hyuga, but this one had been specially formulated to temporarily blind the user for 2 minutes. They are not completely blind, but they are unable to use their eyes. Hinata couldn't help but hiss at the blonde because he only let go when they were in his apartment. He placed several privacy seals on his bed before she could say anything. Ko was right behind us. As I previously stated, the fewer people who know, the better. Please find a seat. He made a motion. Hinata sat tentatively in a kitchen chair, waiting for the explanation. This may be perplexing, but please stick with me until the end. But I'm not Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze here, and I am the Rokudame Hokage. I am 31 years old and one of only 2 Konohagakure no Sado survivors. I traveled in time to repair the damage done by a Konoha shinobi and to prevent Konoha's annihilation. This morning, I arrived at this time by using a jutsu that I spent 13 years developing. My stronger self, my future self, absorbed my weaker self and took control of my body by all rights. So, while my body is Naruto Uzumaki, the 12-year-old genin of Konoha, my mind is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the 31-year-old Hokage. He began to pique her interest. Hinata's eyes widened with each passing word, and despite the improbability of what he was saying, time travel, she believed him. Who is the other person? You also mentioned another survivor. Uchiha Sasuke, my best friend and surrogate brother, is a 31-year-old jonin of Konohagakure no Sado. He assisted me in performing the jutsu that allowed me to return here. We weren't expecting to return so close to the start of the exam. Naruto laughed, embarrassed. Hinata, I know you have a lot of questions, and believe me, I would love to answer them all, but some things are better left unknown. Just believe me when I say that the future is not a happy place and that I must do something to change it. I am not an imposter. I am simply more mature and mentally older, with a true understanding of what is expected of a Konoha shinobi. Do you believe me? He asked repeatedly. Hinata considered her options quietly as she pondered the time traveler's words. If the future was truly that bad, why would they put themselves through it again? What happens if nothing changes? Naruto-kun, I have faith in you. However, it appears improbable that time travel is possible. Naruto had finished blushing her. Hi. It's all right. Everyone called me crazy when I first started doing the jutsu, so I'm used to it. I did, however, show them. Just as I did when they said I'd never be Hokage. He brags. Hinata laughed and nodded at Naruto's childishness. It's all right, Naruto-kun. I trust you. Gomen, for almost attacking you. It's fine, you were only doing your job as a Konoha shinobi. You noticed something suspicious and instead of making excuses, you tried to investigate. Unfortunately, the older, more experienced shinobi have not noticed. I'm sure Kakashi-sensei has, but if not. Naruto's voice trailed off as his eyelids drooped. He was out cold on the bed before Hinata could ask him if he was okay. Hinata smiled and gently removed his sandals before tucking him in. As she walked away, she smiled back. As he reached for a kunai, Naruto was startled awake by a loud banging on the door. He groaned, disoriented, as he remembered what had happened and recognized the voice on the other side of the door. "Damn it, Dobi, if you don't open the door soon, I'll just kick it in." A yell rang out through the woods. "Teme, give me a second to get out of bed," Naruto retorted. When he heard Uchiha laugh, he jumped out of bed and crossed the room, yanking the door open hard enough to send the laughing boy sprawling on his face. The Uchiha had apparently been using the door for support as he struggled to stay upright. He motioned for the boy to enter and close the door, rolling his eyes. Naruto sat on his bed and ran his hand through his hair. "Has Hinata cornered you?" As he finally stopped laughing, Sasuke inquired. "Yeah. She was actually about to attack me. I thought I was an imposter who had hidden the real Naruto somewhere. I couldn't help but tell her something to calm her down. If only she had been that tenacious during the war." Naruto pondered. "How much did she discover?" Sasuke inquired solemnly. "Just that we were time travelers, the last surviving Konoha members, that I was Rokudame and you were a Jonin. That's pretty much it. I didn't know what else to say to her. I did tell her that she would be better off not knowing the majority of it." "So, what did you require?" "More planning is required. What will you do if Jiraiya continues with his shoddy training?" Sasuke inquired, his face contorted in disgust. When the Raven learned of Naruto's actual training while he was away from Konoha, he was furious. Naruto hadn't learned much in general, and Jiraiya was supposed to be a Sannin for God's sake. He had a lot more to teach him than he did. According to Sasuke, Naruto's best teacher was the Hachibi Jinchuriki in Kumo, B, which he thought was pathetic. Simple. Kick his $1 and force him to train me. Refuse to have his books proofread and shred all of his research notes. Though, at this point, I doubt he'll be able to teach me much. Kakashi-sensei, too. It'll be interesting to see what they do when I know everything, or at least, master everything quickly. If you still have it, how will you cover your use of the Chidori, its variations, and the snake summoning? I won't use Chidori or its variants until Kakashi-sensei does, at which point I can simply claim that I copied it accidentally and didn't think to tell him the protocol for copying a teammate or ally's jutsu. I made the changes because I realized how dangerous the Chidori was and wasn't sure if I could use it correctly." Sasuke elaborated. He shrugged, his head tilted as if in thought. "I'm not going to use the snake summoning. Or I could say that I read that if you use the summoning jutsu without a contract, you could be taken to the summoning that best suits you, and that's how I got the snake contract if I have to use it. I honestly don't like them all that much. They are excellent scouts and even better at covert assassinations, but they can't do much else. Unless you're fighting the Jubi and desperately need a way out." Sasuke bemoaned. Naruto laughed and sat up in his bed. "I still have the Forbidden Scroll in my possession. Mizuki was set up last night, so the Hokage believes Mizuki hid it somewhere. However, I will almost certainly be summoned for a psychiatric evaluation. I accidentally broke Mizuki's neck by hitting him too hard. I used seals so they wouldn't know Mizuki and I talked about the scroll. But we really need to dissect the Edo Tensei. We must find a way to put a stop to it. The way Kabuto kept summoning the strongest fighters in history to mess with us was absurd. It was also a bad idea to bring back Madara as impervious with limitless chakra." Naruto moaned. Sasuke nodded, remembering how difficult it had been to fight Madara both before and after absorbing the Jubi. For a few moments, the two sat in silence before Sasuke stood. Do you believe you can develop a seal that will allow us to adjust to our younger bodies and return to peak performance? The last thing we need is to be disorganized in a fight. We also need to understand our chakra limits. You'll also need to remaster the Kyuubi's chakra, and you mentioned having a little of the other 8 Biju's chakra in you. It would be useful if you could also use some of their abilities. Naruto stood up and nodded as Sasuke commented. But first, we eat breakfast. It is impossible to train on an empty stomach. Naruto made a chirp. Sasuke groaned, knowing that Naruto would bring up food. The two time travelers spent the rest of the week regaining muscle strength and relearning their abilities. Both were disappointed to learn that they would have to resign from their respective contracts before they could use their summons. Kurama then stated that they could have multiple contracts as long as the contracted bosses agreed and they weren't on the same tier. Naruto signed the Kitsune contract after some thought, and Sasuke went to get the clan's cat contract. Naruto vowed to return to Uzu one day to retrieve his family's contract. They received a lot of stares when they walked into the classroom on the morning of the team assignments. They were both wearing different outfits and carrying weapons. Sasuke wore a sword around his waist, and Naruto wore a glaive around his back. Sasuke was dressed in black pants, a black shirt, and arm guards rather than arm warmers, which revealed the storage seals on his wrists. Naruto was dressed in a black variation and combination of Yondaime and Nidaime's outfits. The trench coat was the only thing he was missing, and it was only missing because it was still being made. He had it made to order, and it wouldn't arrive until the wave mission. The most shocking aspect of Sasuke's outfit was the absence of the familiar high collar. There was also no sign of orange on Naruto's outfit. The transformation had taken everyone by surprise, and not even the fangirls could say anything about them entering together and immediately taking a seat next to Hinata. Sakura and Ino burst into the room at the same time, acting like fools, just like the last time. Would you two please stop it? Everyone's attention was drawn to Sasuke's yell. You're behaving like children and embarrassing the girls who came here to be kunoichi, which, as far as I can tell, is limited to Hinata. Girls like you are the reason that kunoichi are dismissed. You are more concerned with boys, dating, hair and makeup, clothes, dieting, and gossip. In reality, you should be concentrating on your training, maintaining a healthy weight for an active shinobi, and ensuring that your clothing is combat and training appropriate. Now sit down and keep quiet. Everyone in the room was stunned by the rant. He'd snapped at his fangirls twice now, and both times had been negative. Iruka walked into the quietest class he had ever had as everyone who was standing sat down quietly. I wonder what happened, did they see the Yondaime's ghost or something? He cleared his throat and turned to face the group. To him, it appeared that the girls were finally ready to take on the responsibilities of a shinobi. Except for Sakura, who looked as if she was about to burst into tears at any moment. Congratulations to everyone who has made it this far. I couldn't be more proud of you for taking your first steps as a shinobi. Before I announce the assignments, we must recognize the rookie and kunoichi of the year. It would have been completed sooner if there had not been a tie. Hinata Hyuga has been named kunoichi of the year. Hinata, congratulations. Iruka spoke up and smiled at the shy girl. The room had been shocked once more. They were certain Sakura would be the kunoichi of the year. We now had a tie for Rookie of the Year, and given the circumstances, it was finally decided that there would be two this year. So, Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki, congratulations. Iruka-sensei, how did Naruto Baka get Rookie when he barely passed the entire 4 years? Sakura yelled, hoping to regain her dignity. According to Naruto, he has been failing on purpose because he was unsure he could work effectively with all of the other classes. When combined with his exam performance, the Hokage determined that he wasn't bluffing and agreed that Naruto would have been top of the class the entire time if he had been honest about his abilities. Iruka elaborated. "Thank you, old man. Is that how you kiss up?" Naruto's mind growled. Sakura sagged in her seat, desperately trying to keep her tears at bay. "Each of you will now be assigned to a team of 3, with a Jonin overseeing your training. Because the decisions are final, I apologize, but complaining will not help." Each team was created with a specific format in mind. Team 1. Naruto drifted off and mentally continued the seal design he had begun the day before to counter the Edo Tensei. Team 7 will be Hyuga Hinata, Uchiha Sasuke, and Uzumaki Naruto, led by Hitaki Kakashi. Sakura cut Iruka off before he could continue. "I thought you said the teams were well balanced. How is it balanced to have both rookies and the Kunoichi of the year on the same team?" Iruka was stunned for a minute as she stared at the Kunoichi. Sakura had actually asked a thoughtful question. The Rookie of the Year, Kunoichi of the Year, and Dead Last are always assigned to the same team. However, because there has never been a tie for Rookie of the Year, we were unsure how to format the team. Fortunately for us, Hitaki had expressed a desire for a specific team and had made a formal request for this specific setup. The Hokage was skeptical of the balance, but Kakashi apparently made a compelling case. Iruka elaborated. Sakura sagged in her seat, knowing she'd be on Sasuke's team as well. Haruno Sakura, Inuzuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino will make up Team 8 under Yuhi Kurenai. Yamanaka Ino, Akamichi Choji, and Nara Shikamaru will be on Team 10, which will be led by Sarutobi Asuma. Your Jonins should arrive after lunch. Iruka was cut off once more, but this time by the door opening. But, Gomen, I couldn't wait to get my team. Team 7 is following me. The time travelers were startled when Kakashi called out. He's early. They mentally screamed. They were certain that it wouldn't take Madara and the Jubi to end the world as they left the room with the Jonin. It would happen in the next 10 minutes. So, now that we've arrived, we can get started. I saw how well you 3 interacted during the exams, and to be honest, I'm going to skip the test I was planning to give because I don't believe you need it. So here's the deal. We'll spend some time getting to know each other before beginning training. So my name is Hitaki Kakashi. My interests are diverse. My pet peeves are traitors and teammates who abandon their teammates. My hobbies, well, despite the fact that you are now officially adults, you are still far too young for that. My hopes and dreams for the future are for you to become the best shinobi you possibly can be. As soon as they arrived at Training Field 7, Kakashi said. The 3 genin behind him were taken aback by his suddenness. Well, whatever. My name is Hyuga Hinata. Flower pressing and cinnamon rolls are 2 of my favorite things. I dislike my clan's division and those who look down on others for no reason. My hobbies include training and making medicinal salves, and my future ambition is to abolish the caged bird seal and assist Naruto-kun in achieving his goal. Hinata was able to squeak. Kakashi nodded and turned to face the Uchiha. Sasuke Uchiha, my interests are restricted to training and tomatoes. My dislikes are far too numerous to list, but one in particular stands out, a certain worthless pink-haired banshee. My hobbies include strength training, and my ambition is to avenge the Uchiha clan and do everything in my power to ensure that the Dobi becomes Hokage. He stated unequivocally. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at the final genin's conviction, but kept his gaze fixed on the final genin. Naruto returned his gaze with all the assurance in the world. Naruto Uzumaki, I enjoy training, pranks, and eating ramen. I despise ramen, traitors, liars, and deserters. I don't have many hobbies, but I enjoy gardening, learning new things, and training. My ambition for the future is to become Hokage, to right past wrongs and to bring peace to the world of shinobi. That way, I'll be able to make Shodai's dream a reality, he stated. Kakashi could honestly say he was taken aback. The differences in their personalities reported were greater than clinical error allowed. Hinata was the only one who had stayed the closest. Plus, something about the way Sasuke said he wanted to avenge the Uchiha made him believe that there was something about the massacre that he didn't even know about that Sasuke did. He straightened up and looked at the assembled genin, nodding. Okay, then. Hinata, I know you're shy and probably feel awkward without it, but you have to take it off. The only thing that wearing that from now on will accomplish is to make you overheat. He stated this. She quickly removed the jacket, nodding in embarrassment. Okay, extend your arms. I need to look at your wrists. He gave the order, and the genin obeyed. He repeated the process with their legs after completing some sort of seal on them. After a few hand seals, the three genin were beginning to understand what had happened. You will notice that you are feeling a little different right now. That's because you're all wearing resistance seals and are now encountering more resistance to your movements than before. You're also wearing gravity and weight seals, Naruto. Because of your condition, you can use this training method, whereas Hinata and Sasuke cannot. The genin was informed by Kakashi. It's fine, sensei. Hinata is aware of the Kyuubi. With us, you don't have to beat around the bush. Naruto responded. He tilted his head after a second. Actually, any reasonably intelligent person should be aware of Kyuubi because how do you kill chakras seriously? He pondered. Under his mask, Kakashi smiled, knowing he had made the right decision in his team. Okay. I want you to run 100 laps around the clearing and then do 100 push-ups, sit-ups, squats, lunges, punches, and kicks. If you are tired, please take a short break. There is no point in injuring yourself on the first day. I'll be right back because I need to go get something for all of your training. He informed them before leaving with the Shunshin no Jutsu. Nodding, Sasuke and Naruto sprinted from their starting point and returned their gaze to Hinata. We're already way ahead of you, Hinata, because of how we got here. We'll get you caught up so there isn't such a big gap. For the time being, just do what you can and don't get discouraged. Sasuke called back, prompting the kunoichi to nod and follow them. She simply knew that she would eventually catch up to them and realize her dream. When Kakashi returned to the training grounds, he was surprised to see Hinata, Naruto, and Sasuke casually throwing a water balloon back and forth from tree branches. What are you up to? He inquired, amused. Well, we finished what you wanted us to do, so we began working on individual skills when Hinata informed us that we were wasting too much chakra in some of our techniques, so she assisted us with chakra control exercises, and we decided that since we got the tree climbing so quickly, we would work on our focus. As he tossed the water balloon to Sasuke, Naruto explained. What about the balloon? To improve our concentration and coordination. Because we can't touch the balloon for more than 5 seconds, we have to catch it and throw it quickly while aiming and staying attached to the tree. Sasuke informed the befuddled but elated Jonin. He had never seen a team bond as strong as theirs, and they were taking the initiative to help each other with their training. He smiled as he set down the equipment he had brought. I assume the clan taught you how to climb trees. Hi. Have you mastered water walking yet? No. father stated that I lacked the necessary level of mastery over tree climbing and that he would not teach me. Hinata muttered something. How about you three come down and we'll continue with your training? He suggested as the three nodded and jumped down in front of him. The next 2.5 hours were spent on chakra control exercises that, while they picked up quickly, Sasuke and Naruto desperately needed. The next step is to find a weapon that you are comfortable using that is different from what you already have. I know the Hyuga clan frowns on any technique other than the gentle fist, but if they don't like it, they can kiss my $1. I am now your Jonin. As the three tired genin looked up at him, Kakashi declared. He opened a scroll to reveal a plethora of weapons. Sasuke turned to face Naruto, who nodded. Is there any reason, Kakashi-sensei, why Madara was the only person who ever used a gunbai and scythe? Naruto inquired. I believe it was deemed an impractical weapon, and many people are unwilling to use it because of its association with Madara. Why? I've always wondered what it's like to fight one. That is the reason. Naruto responded. Kakashi looked at the genin for a moment, trying to figure out why he was being asked this question, and then nodded. It's up to you if you want to try and use one, but I doubt I'd be much help in learning how. You should probably ask around for the weapon's master. Kakashi made a chirp. Thank you, sensei. What weapon would complement my kunai, shuriken, glaive, and sword? Naruto inquired sheepishly. The genin made Kakashi sweat. He already knows how to use all of those. Have you considered using chakra knives? You appear to have a good arsenal of mid to long-range weapons but none for close combat. Kakashi elaborated. Naruto enthusiastically nodded. He had intended to learn how to use them, but he never had the opportunity. To be honest, Kakashi-sensei, I am only at ease with my sword, kunai, shuriken, and a bow and arrow. Although the latter could use some improvement. Sasuke told the awestruck Jonin. That's all right. We can help you improve your archery skills. Kakashi responded. They were repeatedly proving to be the right team for him. I'm not sure, Kakashi-sensei. I had never considered using a weapon before. Hinata spoke up hesitantly. So far, Kakashi's advice had been spot on. She knew after the first 5 laps that if she had been wearing her coat, she would have fainted. So, Hinata, has there ever been anything that has piqued your interest? It's fine if there isn't, but it would be nice to know if you were interested before the clan intervened. No. Kakashi cocked his head at the heiress and began making mental notes. Tell me, Hinata, which would you choose, fighting the enemy on the front lines or healing an injured comrade on the front lines? Healing. In that case, I'll look into getting you some Iryojutsu training, and you should look into improving your range. Senbon, bow and arrow, as well as a kodachi or chakra blade. Kakashi pondered. The suggestion caused the kunoichi's eyes to widen. Her juken was impressive, but lacked the range required by most shinobi, according to Naruto and Sasuke. Wouldn't it be possible, Kakashi-sensei, to use the senbon to make the juken more of a ranged attack? Naruto was genuinely intrigued. Naruto, that's an intriguing question. I couldn't say for sure, but if done correctly, it could. He agreed. Hinata smiled broadly and nodded in agreement as they began to work on their various weapons. Hinata flinched as the compound door opened and walked slowly into the Hyuga house. When they switched to taijutsu training, Kakashi was brutal. He stated that he was aware of the team's enormous potential and that he intended to maximize it. She quickly removed her shoes and went upstairs to take a quick bath before returning downstairs for dinner. Meals in the clan were always quiet affairs with the occasional question. Although many of them were not directed at her. She was perfectly content to be a fly on the wall. Hinata. Tell me how your day went. Did they finally release the class rankings? What is your sensei's name? Hiyashi inquired about breaking the silence. Hinata almost dropped her chopsticks when she was addressed. To-san, it went well. I was named Kunoichi of the year after the class standings were announced. Naruto-kun and Sasuke-san were tied for rookie, so they both got it. Her father received her response. Haishi's surprise could not be concealed. Even he had expected something different. Hinata was always ranked between 5th and 3rd in her class, never higher. I see, and how about your team? I was assigned to Team 7, which was led by Hitaki Kakashi. Naruto-kun and Sasuke-san are my teammates. Apparently, Kakashi-sensei had a specific request for the three of us. Hinata responded. Hiyashi was taken aback once more. He was well aware that Team 7 had historically been designated as a first response team. He had assumed that she would be assigned to a tracking team. He'd been caught off guard once more, and everything had begun to change after the academy exams. Everything had changed in an unexpected way since Naruto had encouraged Hinata at the taijutsu tournament. You stayed out late. Today, Kakashi-sensei began our training. He didn't want to squander time. He believes that Team 7 is the next generation of Sannin. I'm supposed to meet him every day at 5 a.m. for training, and he said I'd be lucky to get home before 6. She muttered. Her nervousness was growing as she was not used to being the center of attention. She was terrified that she would begin stuttering at any moment. I see, the Hyuga patriarch said before returning to his dinner. The remainder of the meal was consumed in silence. The silence was something Hinata appreciated. Neji was fuming internally across from the table. She'd defied fate twice now. She should never have won the tournament, and now, despite being behind the rest of the class for the last 4 years, she was the top-ranked Kunoichi in her class. There had to be favoritism somewhere, and he was determined to find it. Everything hurts, Sasuke. Naruto whimpered as he slid down onto Sasuke's bed. He was only wearing shorts and stood there watching as the raven-haired teen tossed his dirty clothes in the laundry. What did you expect training with Kakashi-sensei to do, tickle? He demanded. Naruto simply stuck out his tongue and rolled onto his back. It worked the first time. I'm surprised Kakashi-sensei didn't ask us any questions or try to make us show more than we wanted to. Naruto pondered aloud. You are not alone in this. I was taken aback. He will, however. He just hasn't decided on the right time. What do you think your chances of catching Hinata are? He inquired of a friend. Very good. We can teach her the shadow clone and have her train even when she is at home once her chakra is a little higher. That way, we'll be able to take her into the seal we created and spend more time with her there. Excellent thought. She appears to be genuinely interested in assisting you. I just hope she doesn't go overboard. When you're involved, she gets carried away. Sasuke laughed. Naruto nodded and groaned. As well as being reckless. When the two friends looked at each other, they felt a weight lift off their shoulders at the prospect of receiving assistance. We need to train hard to ensure that we complete the Nami mission one way or another. That way, we'll be able to save and recruit Zabuza and Haku. Naruto nodded and sealed the room's privacy. Then he spread out the forbidden scroll of sealing from his storage seal. As they began to study the Kachiyose Edo Tensei, both shinobi developed a focused expression. It would be a long night for both of them. Kakashi slipped from his perch in a nearby tree, cursing his inability to gather much information on the two. Unbeknownst to the copy ninja, the two shinobi were not meditating, but were instead reading the scroll that the entire village was still looking for. "I'll find out what you two are hiding. Please don't make me second-guess my decision by doing something that forces me to deal with you," he prayed in his head. Hinata's training with Kakashi, Naruto, and Sasuke was proving difficult, but she was determined to catch up with her teammates and be useful in the coming war. She had simply never noticed how weak many of the shinobi had become as a result of the academy's training in comparison to where they needed to be. Sasuke and Naruto had explained to her that the other countries' academies were far superior, even if their methods were dubious. She was inclined to believe that based on what she had heard about the future. She had heard that Shino was also having difficulties with his team. Kiba and Sakura must be stifling him. Kurenai irritated her by not getting those two in line by now. Sure, she saw the Jonin as a surrogate older sister, but she was acting very differently than she remembered. Kurenai hadn't done much to boost her confidence either. She stepped out of the shower, dried off, and began to dress for the new day, stretching. Breakfast was a quiet affair as usual, though she noticed that Neji kept staring at her as if he had something to ask her. She had no idea why he despised her so much, but she was bound and determined to mend the schism that had formed between them. After putting her dishes in the sink, she grabbed her bag from training and dashed out the door. Kakashi-sensei informed her that they would be doing some rather strenuous training today, and she wanted to at least get warmed up before he decided to half-kill them. She arrived at the training field in record time and noticed Sasuke and Naruto sparring and critiquing each other's form. She noticed that their daily routines seemed strange at first, but she soon realized that they were strengthening each other. When Hinata stepped into the clearing, their fight came to an end. Naruto passed his gaze over her and nodded. They stretched and walked over to the heiress, smiling warmly at their teammate. "All those chakra building exercises are paying off. You're all set to learn the shadow clone. That means we can get more done in less time. The thing you should know about Hinata's method is that if you overdo it, you will die. So, please try not to push it past the limits that we set for you, okay?" Sasuke inquired. Hinata couldn't help but smile at the compliment. "Keep in mind, however, that Sasuke and I can use it far more freely than anyone else because we've had far more practice, far more chakra, and we've learned how to deal with the mental backlash that comes with it." Naruto stated this. "Because of the fox, I can use it more than Sasuke. The shadow clone is a more advanced clone that allows you to create a solid copy of yourself with its own chakra network. As a result, the clone can use your techniques and cast jutsu, though I'm not sure how well your Byakugan will work with a shadow clone. It also necessitates a significant amount of chakra. Because of how draining it can be, most Jonin avoid using it. You can, however, easily send your clone into enemy territory to scout for information and then simply have it dispel when it finds it. The information it gathers will be returned to you, along with any remaining chakra. It does, however, send back the exhaustion. The payoff is well worth the effort. The memory transfers, exhaustion and mental backlash are what make it dangerous as a training tool. However, proper training and meditation can help to reduce the negative effects. Never create more clones than you can handle. Dispel the clones after 4 hours of training or 2 hours of reading. This will help you get used to the effects faster. If your clone discovers a way to improve the technique or makes progress with a technique during training, dispel that clone in order to transfer the knowledge of what was discovered. That way, the rest of your clones can take it even further. Physical training is also impossible with the shadow clones. Muscle memory is acceptable, but strength, endurance, speed, and resistance training are not. Fuinjutsu and Iryo Jutsu, as well as jutsu and elemental manipulation, can be used. Sasuke went on. Hinata nodded in agreement. Based on what they had told her, it was clearly a very useful but potentially dangerous training method if used incorrectly. I'm prepared. Her voice was filled with conviction as she spoke. She had become more confident and had overcome her stuttering since beginning to work with Naruto and Sasuke. Something she was extremely grateful for. She was bound and determined to be by Naruto's side during the impending darkness, and nothing would get in her way. And here is the one and only hand seal for the shadow clone. Naruto stated, returning her attention to the present. Nodding in agreement, she set to work on mastering the shadow clone and advancing to their level. When Kakashi arrived at the training field a half-hour later, he was greeted by multiple copies of his students performing various exercises while a three-way fight was taking place in the training field center. Do they know about the shadow clone? When was this? I really should start asking them about it. I suppose the Uchiha clan could have recorded the shadow clone at some point, but do they realize how dangerous this training method is? You appear to have gotten up very early this morning. You've also gotten a head start on your training. What are your shadow clones up to? Innocently, he inquired. Oh, you know, various clone techniques, and since we didn't have any litmus paper, we decided to put our chakra to the test the hard way by learning E-class ninjutsu of various elements and seeing which were easier to learn. Plus, Hinata's clones are still assisting us in fine-tuning our chakra control, so is that a thing? We're also doing some weaponry training there to get some more practice with them. Work on muscle memory and all that. Naruto responded nonchalantly as he dodged a flying foot and spun quickly to avoid a Juken strike. I see, and when did you learn to clone the shadow? I believe it was from one of the scrolls in Sasuke's library. I first learned it because of Fuzzy, then Sasuke a few months later when his chakra reserves were sufficient, and we just taught Hinata an hour ago. Naruto responded by grabbing Hinata's hand and throwing her at Sasuke. Kakashi was blown away. How often and for how long do you typically train before and after our sessions? Together? About a half hour to an hour before and 2 or 3 hours after. Alone? I don't believe we ever stop, not even in our sleep. Sasuke responded by standing and assisting Hinata to her feet. Kakashi could honestly say that he was impressed by his team. They'd taken the initiative to train even harder than he was, and they seemed pleased. So, Sensei, could we figure out our chakra types? We'd like to start learning some elemental ninjutsu and attempting some combination attacks with them, but we're not sure where to begin because we're not sure what types we have. Hinata is having difficulty with the jutsu, which I believe is due to the Hyuga clan's emphasis on taijutsu. Her chakra isn't used to being used in ways other than that. Naruto inquired. Kakashi couldn't help but feel pride well up in him, but he was also growing suspicious of the two boys and their tenacity in pushing themselves to be stronger than most genin fresh out of the academy should be. It couldn't hurt, I suppose. Most Chunin haven't even begun to practice elemental manipulation. Don't be surprised if there are no results, said Kakashi. He hoped that by remaining cautious while also opening up a little more than usual, they would eventually trust him enough not to give vague answers to his questions. He grinned to himself as he pulled out 3 sheets of litmus paper. Do you understand how litmus paper works? You put chakra in it, and the reaction tells you which elements you are better suited for. Hinata gave a tentative response. He handed the sheets to his students, nodding and laughing as Naruto squinted at the paper. I've never figured out how that worked. Given that the paper is made from chakra trees, isn't that correct? According to the books I've read on chakra trees, it's impossible to harvest anything from the tree because even the smallest amount of chakra can cause a reaction, rendering it useless. So, how do they obtain the newspaper? He inquired with genuine interest. Kakashi, surprised, shrugged. I'm not sure, he said before clearing his throat. Okay, then. If the paper burns well, you can be certain that it is on fire. If it crinkles, it's lightning. If it gets wet, it's water, and if it tears, it's wind. Got it? The three genin nodded in agreement. Okay, who wants to go first? When Hinata volunteered, Kakashi asked and smiled to himself. Thanks to the team, the heiress was quickly overcoming her shyness and becoming more outgoing and assertive, and he was optimistic that she would be able to maintain her progress. He was taken aback when the paper crinkled and then started to burn. 2 types of chakra? Fire and lightning. I might have more fun with this team than I thought. Good. Fire and lightning. A unique pairing, especially for a Hyuga. But it's fine. It will make your Juken even more lethal. Hinata nodded and looked at Sasuke as he shrugged. Another type of lightning? Again with the fire? Did I really choose a team with everyone having the same chakra type? That's quite intriguing. I've never seen 2 genin with identical chakra types before. Shall we go 3 for 3, Naruto? He cracked a joke. Naruto smirked and pressed the chakra against his paper. When Kakashi said, make it 3 for 3, he was half joking, but Naruto did follow through. But that wasn't all. First, the paper was divided into 4 sections, each of which reacted differently. One section became wet, another crinkled, yet another burned, and the last crumbled. Kakashi could only stare at the gleeful genin. His 3 genin all had the same chakra type, and one of them had all of them. Naruto, you never cease to amaze me. All 5 types of chakras? Your fire and wind appear to be the most powerful, with the wind slightly stronger. If you can combine them, you will have access to all of the elemental Kekkei Genkai. So, shall we begin with elemental manipulation? The team's progress in training sessions lengthened over the next few days. It wasn't a problem for Naruto and Sasuke because they were used to training all hours of the day and night, but Hinata had a different story. Hiashi was the first to notice that she was falling asleep within a half hour of getting home and that she was doing more of her training outside of the compound. Even if Kakashi had given her exercises to do at home, he never saw her do them. He could tell, however, that her chakra reserves were increasing much faster than he expected. So he decided to inquire about Kakashi's training methods. He wasn't angry, but he was concerned. Naturally, Kakashi was late, but not by as much as usual, and he had a good reason. I apologize for being late, Hiashi-sama, but I needed to find someone to keep an eye on my team while they completed their daily D-rank missions. As soon as Kakashi entered the room, he apologized. It's all right. I had a few questions about Hinata's training that I wanted to ask, and since training lasted until almost 10 o'clock yesterday, I figured I'd have to ask them during training. Did it really happen? Please accept my apologies. I will try not to keep them for as long. Hiashi couldn't tell if Kakashi was serious or sarcastic. What is Hinata currently learning? He got right to the point. Right now, she's trying to figure out how to clean a river while wearing weights on her arms. If you mean general training, we are working on weaponry, strategy, stealth, and elemental manipulation. At the hospital, she is also receiving Iryo training. Kakashi responded. Hiyashi paused for a moment to process what he had just heard. Aren't they a little young for elemental manipulation? I would normally say that genin are. However, Hinata, Sasuke, and Naruto are soaking up what I'm teaching them, and by the time I get to training the next day, they're almost 4 lessons ahead of schedule. Hinata also has a lightning and fire affinity that I couldn't ignore. If they didn't have an affinity, I figured we could work on chakra strengthening exercises and elemental manipulation. They've really taken to it. They have also developed their own training methods. I'd say they'll only need 1 or 2 more days to master their elements. Following that, I plan to teach them a few jutsu from their respective elements before sending them on their first C-rank mission. Kakashi explained to the perplexed clan chief. Hiyashi had not anticipated any of this. He hadn't expected to learn that Hinata had 2 affinities. Are you aware of the clan's position, jutsu, and weaponry? You are aware that as her Jonin, I am free to teach her whatever I want and that the clan cannot intervene unless there is a direct threat to her safety, correct? Limiting her to the Jukin, in my opinion, is a waste of her abilities. She is extremely skilled, and her accuracy with a bow and arrow is making most Enbu look like novices. Kakashi responded. Hiyashi realized the war was over. The clan elders would not be pleased, but Kakashi was correct. Nothing could be done to stop him as long as his training did not endanger Hinata's safety. He sighed and turned to look out the window. I have no beef with Hinata. I genuinely care about her, but the pressure to crown one heir and brand the other is wearing thin. She had made so little progress that I had given up on her. Keeping her firstborn status and Hanabi's skill level as a buffer so I didn't have to choose. Protecting one's children is not wrong. The only thing that could go wrong is the manner in which you protect them. In Hinata's case, it shattered her self-esteem. Instead of accepting things as they were, more training with her and identifying problem areas would have sufficed. The buffer would be more effective if their skill levels remained roughly the same because there would be more reason to wait. They argued that while they were both at the same skill level, one could pull ahead and become stronger than the other. Purchasing more time with fewer headaches. She doesn't hold it against you. She cares about you. All she wants is your approval and for the clan to be reunited as the family it should be. Standing, said Kakashi. Please excuse me as I need to get back to my team. But before I go, I have one more question. Is it true that the cage bird seal can be replaced without the elder's intervention as long as a similar seal is produced to protect the Byakugan? Yes. Hiyashi had been taken aback by the question, but he had responded anyway. Nodding, Kakashi exited the room, leaving the Hyuga to his thoughts. Hinata was in pain when she returned home. Naruto and Sasuke used some strange jutsu after training to complete nearly 6 months of training in only half an hour. They claimed it was a space-time ninjutsu that they had developed to help them improve faster, and to be honest, it was pretty cool. I'm back. She called out and found her father staring at a glass of tea in the dining room. I've returned home, father. Kakashi-sensei instructed us to take tomorrow off so that we would be well rested for our first C rank. Already? He said he'd accept only one if you mastered your elements and learned a few jutsu from each. Hiyashi almost squeaked. Naruto, Sasuke, and I kind of trained through lunch. She confessed, embarrassed. The expression on Kakashi's face when they returned from lunch with their elemental training completed was priceless. Of course, Ever since they learned the exercises, each of them had a few shadow clones doing the training at the same time, so it went faster than he had expected. Hiyashi laughed and shook his head. Perhaps Kakashi chose a team that he couldn't keep up with. He lifted his hand and handed Hinata a scroll he had been carrying with him since Kakashi's visit. These are the scrolls from your mother. She was working on some Juken techniques, and her notes are included. He startled the girl with his words. She'd want them completed, and I can't think of anyone better suited than you. Hinata gave her father a warm smile and hugged him for the first time in years. Kakashi, I know you've been making great strides with your team, I really do, but I think you're pushing them too hard. You haven't had them for very long. I understand that, Sandaime-sama, but I believe you are underestimating how hard they are pushing themselves. I'm the one who's having trouble keeping up. Furthermore, I believe Naruto is aware of his heritage but is silent about it. All I ask is permission to go to Uzu and try to recover anything left for him by the Uzumaki clan. Don't you think he deserves it? Kakashi responded. He'd been arguing with the Hokage for several hours. Why was it so difficult to let them stop in Uzu on their way home from a mission? However, Kakashi, you are well aware of why I haven't permitted any missions to Uzu to try and locate anything that may have been left behind. The third fire shadow retaliated. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that's the real reason. Naruto, Sandaime-sama, is an Uzumaki and the heir not only of the Uzumaki clan but also of the country itself. I can't stop him from returning to his homeland as a foreign diplomat, and at the rate he's improving, he might need access to his clan's techniques if we want to slow him down before he reaches Anbu level in a few months. Furthermore, I believe the two have yet to open up to me because we are in a village where people may be watching. Kakashi responded. He knew he was pushing boundaries and crossing the line only to find himself back behind it, but he needed the Sandaime to see that he needed to get Naruto to Uzu. It was the least Kakashi could do after abandoning his sensei's son in such a manner. He just hoped that the Sandaime didn't aggravate his deteriorating relationship with Naruto. He had witnessed how quickly things had changed between the two, and he had a sneaking suspicion that it was because Naruto knew who his family was and that the Sandaime had been lying to him the entire time. But the old leader's expression told him he'd be there for a while. The air was crisp and cool in the morning. It was an unusually cool day in Konoha, but it would soon warm up. The three genin were sparring as was becoming customary, and it would be thrilling to compare and contrast the children who had only been academy students a month and a half ago. Even for Sasuke and Naruto, who had seen Hinata adapt to rapid changes, the ease with which she was adapting to new things was startling. While she had not jumped several skill levels, she had caught up to and easily surpassed her old self's talent by the Chunin exams. While that may not seem like much of a leap to most, she managed 9-10 months of training with Sasuke and Naruto in just a month and a half. Naruto knew Hinata would never believe it if she could see herself with a different Jonin and the improvements that had been made. The visible difference was mind-boggling. Her stuttering was gone, she felt more confident in her posture, and her movements became more fluid. She was also excelling in her bow and arrow studies and was attempting to combine her Juken with Senbon needles. She could easily become a mid-range fighter if she could manage it. Their elemental progress was rapidly accelerating. Despite the fact that Naruto and Sasuke had already completed some of it, they had to restart due to their younger bodies. Regardless, they had surpassed their previous benchmarks, and Kakashi stated that there was little else they could do to improve their mastery. Sasuke, Naruto, and Hinata were all of the same mind. As a result, they were working to expand their control. The ability to control the electrical impulses that the brain sent to the entire body, according to Sasuke, was the pinnacle of lightning manipulation mastery. Thus, technically, the person is under control. Hinata insisted that the ability to remove or add heat to specific locations would be the pinnacle of fire control. Remove all of the heat in the human body, for example, to cause sudden hypothermia, or add heat to another person's body to prevent hypothermia. Naruto simply desired to fly. He was experimenting with using his wind chakra to mimic Onoki's ability to fly with his particle release. It was a serious matter to him. If he and his team could fly around, they would be able to avoid ambushes and arrive at battlegrounds faster. Any major battles would also receive aerial coverage. Only Iwa and the Akatsuki could brag about that at the moment. As Kakashi stepped into the clearing, the three genin looked up. Yo! How is my adorable genin doing this morning? How many times do I have to tell you that I am not cute or little? Naruto yelled back, making everyone laugh. Sasuke had been unable to break the habit with the blonde, so it was always amusing when it happened. Kakashi simply laughed and waved his dismissively. So there's no need to get antsy. I decided that instead of the boring D ranks, we would do a C rank mission today. Then it will almost certainly become an A rank. Isn't that exciting? Kakashi made a chirp. The three genins blinked in surprise. A C rank and then an A rank? Naruto squeaked his way out. Make no mistake, he wasn't afraid. In fact, he was ecstatic to be doing higher level missions again, but he knew the team wasn't quite ready to take on A rank missions. Keep your cool. The A rating is solely due to its location. It is, technically, a C rank. However, due to its location, it is assigned an A rank. Kakashi elaborated. The three blinked and exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. When are we leaving? Sasuke inquired. He was eager to return to what he knew best, missions. He also wanted to ensure that his abilities had not deteriorated. He was nervous, however, because of his previous mission. He was worried that he wouldn't be able to protect Hinata or his Hokage. The last thing he wanted to do was hurt Naruto any more than he had already. Stop worrying about it. You must remain focused on the mission. If you are intent on making a mistake, you will. He berated himself. As soon as you all get to the gate. Kakashi informed them and then proceeded to gather his mission equipment. 10? Naruto inquired of the other two. 10. They all agreed in unison. The three then vanished from the clearing, leaving no trace of their presence. When Hinata returned home, she immediately began inspecting her belongings to ensure that nothing was missing. One thing Sasuke and Naruto had told her to do was to always keep her gear packed and maintained so that they didn't waste time when they went out. She took her father's advice to heart and dashed down the hall to his study. May I come in, father? She yelled through the open door. She entered the room after receiving permission and bowed to the stern man in front of her. Kakashi-sensei just informed us that we are leaving on a mission and that I should meet them at the gate as soon as possible. I wanted to let you know before I left so you wouldn't be concerned. He was informed by her. What kind of mission is it? As far as I recall, your team has only completed a few D ranks. Hiyashi was taken aback by the suddenness of Kakashi's decision. A C rank mission followed immediately by an A rank mission. She said softly, hoping that the other man wouldn't burst out laughing at the news. To his credit, the stoic Hyuga did not spit out his tea when he heard the news. A rank? He sputtered, trying to clear his lungs of the tea he had just consumed. Hi. Kakashi better be careful what he's doing. Hiyashi growled. He didn't want to see his eldest die as a result of a careless jonin. Hinata, on the other hand, was struggling not to laugh at her father. She had not anticipated him attempting to drown himself in tea. "I'm confident I'll be fine." She kept a straight face throughout. Hiyashi groaned and nodded tentatively, granting Hinata permission to leave. If anything happened to Hinata, he'd make mincemeat of the copy ninja. Sasuke and Naruto were also quick to retrieve their belongings. Naruto had left all of his mission supplies at Sasuke's because he had been spending the nights there trying to decipher the Edo Tensei. Naruto waited for his friend to lock the door after they had them and ensured everything was fine before applying some high-level security seals. They didn't want a fangirl breaking in and discovering the scroll of sealing unrolled on Sasuke's bed. Darting to the gate, they discovered Kakashi already there and Hinata just arriving. Not too shabby. 17 seconds and 7 minutes. You've really picked up the pace, haven't you? Kakashi made a remark. After an equipment check, Kakashi nearly died when he saw the mini armory Sasuke and Naruto had brought. The three nodded breathlessly and headed out. Kakashi remained silent for nearly an hour before speaking again. The first mission is an anti-bandit mission. I decided that we should get this done now so that there are no issues later. The client has asked that the bandits be eliminated rather than captured. As a result, no one leaves the camp alive, with the exception of anyone they may have kidnapped. Because this is your first kill, I will not hold it against you if you fall apart, but try to hold off until the mission is completed," said Kakashi. Normally, he wouldn't have been so direct, but he had a sneaking suspicion that Hinata would be making her first kill today. The rest of the journey was spent in silence, and the group arrived at the client's village in no time. A brief conversation with Tsubasa revealed nothing new about the mission except that the bandits had kidnapped several young girls 3 days before. While it made it more difficult to attack freely, it also meant that he could assess his team's overall stealth in the field rather than tame exercises. Okay, since Tsubasa had no idea where to look for the bandits, we'll have to look for them ourselves. Fortunately, the Byakugan and my nose will be able to track them down quickly. What about Hinata? Said Kakashi to the formerly shy heiress. She nodded and quickly scanned the surroundings, activating her dojutsu. 7 miles to the north-northeast. After a few moments, she said. With a nod, the team set off again. We'll try to take out as many as we can quietly. We don't need one of them using one of the girls as a shield or hostage. If our cover is blown, try to get as many as you can before they try. Your shadow clones will be extremely useful in this operation. We'll be able to get rid of a lot of them in a shorter period of time. Remember, no matter what you see or hear, you must remain calm and clear-headed. Kakashi informed them before they fell silent once more to prevent the bandits from overhearing any conversation. Kakashi and the genin immediately began looking for the kidnapped girls while taking note of the visible number of bandits as soon as the camp came into view. Hinata used her Byakugan to locate scouts who were not visible at the time. There are 30 bandits. According to what I can see, 3 hostages in the southern tent are unharmed. 10 scouts patrolled the perimeter, staying just out of sight of the camp. The one beneath us is fast asleep. There could be a shinobi in the northern tent. Hinata signed on behalf of the others. The other 3 nodded and split up to try to take out the guards first. Kakashi was quick to dispatch 4 of the guards before they could react. His experience made it simple, and as he hid the last body in the shrubbery, he wondered how his genin were faring. After they split up, Hinata stood back and tacked an arrow onto her bow. If there was ever a time to put her training to the test, it was now. As soon as she let the first arrow fly, she notched a second and released it as quickly as the first, this time using her Byakugans to assist in pinpointing the enemy. Both arrows struck their targets, piercing the back of their heads. Feeling a little bile rise up in her throat, she forced herself to calm down and began looking for any way to reach the hostages without being noticed. Sasuke had no trouble getting rid of the guards on his end. After all, slitting a sleeping man's throat was never difficult. It only took a kunai to the forehead to take out the other one. His thoughts kept returning to the possible shinobi that Hinata thought she saw. Granted, it could be a civilian with greater reserves, but this is uncommon outside of shinobi families. With their luck, it was a nuke nin, and they were in for another mission escalation. Why us? He asked himself. Naruto was also unimpressed with his bodyguards. They had to turn around before he could kill them, but instead of raising the alarm, they just stood there staring at the kid with the headband who appeared out of nowhere. He swung his glaive, removing both of their heads at the same time, rolling his eyes. Please tell me they aren't all this stupid. He mentally moaned. He then walked towards the camp. Realizing they wouldn't be able to entice the bandits out of the camp, Kakashi raised his hand and ordered Hinata to fire a volley of arrows into the camp. Meanwhile, the bandits were lounging inside the camp, complaining about the poor hauls they had been getting. Why do we continue to raid this area? There's nothing good about this place. One of them expressed their displeasure to a friend. Because that is what the boss desires, and he gets what he desires. You are aware of this. Remember what happened to the previous complainant? The response came. So why can't we have a good time with the girls? Orders. They must not be touched. I'm not sure, but it almost seems like the boss wants shinobi to come after us. You moron. Why would he want us to be discovered? Perhaps he intends to sell them to Gato or something. The man's response was cut short when an arrow became lodged in his throat and the area became engulfed in thick smoke. Hinata used the shadow clone on her arrow as soon as she released it, and it was the first of many to fall. Only 12 of the 30 people who remained in the camp survived the barrage. As soon as the arrows stopped, 3 figures obscured by smoke burst into the clearing, bringing death with them. The entire episode lasted less than 2 minutes. As the smoke cleared, it was possible to see another figure joining the original 3. That was far too simple. Naruto made a remark. While they did not express themselves, the rest of the team was thinking along the same lines. Please accept my apologies for my men not being shinobi. Maybe this will make it less boring. A voice could be heard coming from the northern tent. When a figure stepped out into the clearing and snickered at the shinobi, all 4 of them yawned. Greta. You were Iwagakure's Hachi. You left the village after failing to receive your Jonin promotion and learning that your former Genin squad had all already made Jonin. You don't have much of a bounty either. It's almost as if the village is unconcerned about what happens to you. Naruto said as he yawned. Hachi hissed at the blonde. He has no right to speak down to him. You, little. Wait a minute, you resemble that damned Yondaime of yours. What the hell is your name? He insisted. The resemblance was uncanny, and he'd never forget the man who murdered his parents during the war. Naruto shook his head. Does it make a difference? You're going to die anyway. He replied, then smiled at him. Tell me why you decided to just sit here and wait for your camp to be discovered? It's none of your concern. Hachi charged at the blonde, only to be met with a foot to the face as Sasuke pushed him away from the Rokudame. He raised his hands and began to weave hand seals while staring at the raven-haired boy. He was going to kill these Konoha scum either way. He'd kill the Yondaime impersonator, and then they'd have to let him back into the village. The Konoha team stood motionless as the enraged Iwa Nin wove his seals. They knew which jutsu he was performing because of their training with Kakashi and prior knowledge of Iwa's jutsu, in the case of the time traveler. This jutsu was best avoided after it had been cast. It couldn't be re-aimed that way. The four shinobi jumped to the side as the last seal was woven and the chakra surged, then quickly moved into a practiced formation for encounters like these. Hinata quickly withdrew a handful of senbon and fired them at the shinobi after coating them with a fine layer of chakra. Every single one of them connected with their target, multiple tenketsu in the arms and legs. Hachi cursed and glared at the heiress as he felt the sensation leave the affected limbs. The Hyuga, as far as he knew, were taijutsu practitioners, and their juken was not a ranged ability. Unfortunately, the man had no time to think because he was forced to fall to the side to avoid a kunai strike from Kakashi and moved right onto Sasuke's sword. There had been no epic battles or showmanship. Simply result-oriented combat. Sasuke quickly removed his sword from the Jonin Wantobi and sealed his head in a scroll. He looked up and shrugged at the Jonin while cleaning his sword. What? He dashed right up to it. He justified making everyone laugh. I see you're making good progress with your ranged juken attacks, Hinata. Kakashi applauded. The girl blushed as they moved the bandit corpses to a pile, and one Kaiten jutsu later, they were ash. The group turned and walked into the tent where the girls were being held hostage, almost as if they were one. Overall, they appeared to be in good condition, but Naruto could tell that something was wrong. Genjutsu, perhaps? He proposed kneeling beside one of them. Nodding, Kakashi used the release and nearly died as the startled girl shrieked in fear and threw herself away from him. Whoa. It's okay, we're not going to hurt you. Sasuke quickly stated that he was attempting to keep his voice even. With all of the attacks the time traveler had been through, the sudden movement had put his instincts on high alert for a brief moment. The girl raised her head and spun to face the other two, just as Hinata released their genjutsu as well. We're Konoha ninja, and we've been tasked with dealing with the bandits and safely returning you home. Will you put your trust in us enough to follow us back to the village? In a low but even voice, Kakashi inquired of the three girls. They nodded slowly after looking at each other, and Hinata helped them to their feet. She knew they probably wouldn't trust any of the boys right now, given what they'd probably been through. As Naruto left some clones behind to raid what the bandits had, the group returned to the village in silence. He secretly hoped that the bandits had some jutsu scrolls or weapons with which they could build a decent armory. As soon as they saw the gates, the girls dashed ahead, hoping to return to a familiar environment, their home. The three genin stood by the gate waiting for Kakashi to report the mission's success. Sasuke and Naruto were mostly waiting for Hinata's breakdown as the realization that she had ended someone's life dawned on her. They knew it would be emotionally draining for the gentle girl, but they also knew she needed the experience sooner rather than later. Hinata dashed into the bushes and began to vomit just as the silver-haired Jonin was about to return to the group. Naruto shook his head at Sasuke and walked away to console his future wife. It just hit her, Sasuke stated flatly in response to the Jonin's curious gaze. Naruto and Hinata rejoined the group after nearly 10 minutes of consolation. Hinata appeared pale and agitated, while Naruto appeared sympathetic. He'd certainly had his fair share of comforting the girl when she was sick. Having a pregnant wife with severe morning sickness would certainly give someone a lot of experience, wouldn't it? When Kakashi confirmed that the three were ready to depart, they set off on their next mission. I'm surprised at how well you and Naruto are handling this. I'm more surprised by Naruto than by you, Sasuke. Several minutes later, Kakashi admitted. They were flying through the trees at breakneck speed. Much faster than a Jonin with 3 new genin should move. To be fair, I did witness my family being slaughtered before my eyes. The only difference was that I was doing the killing rather than watching from within a genjutsu. Sasuke shot back. What did the Hokage not tell you? This was not my first slaying. Mizuki attempted to kill me after a failed attempt to frame me for stealing the Forbidden Scroll. I accidentally killed him. Naruto only admitted half-heartedly. He knew the man hadn't truly failed. Naruto had simply reversed the framing. No, that was never mentioned to me, admitted Kakashi. Weird. So, where are we now? After quite a long argument with the Sandaime, I managed to get permission to take you to Uzu, Kakashi explained to the genin. Naruto felt his legs slightly lock and he came to a halt. Uzu? He inquired quietly. He had intended to return, but he had not expected the Sandaime to allow him to return so soon. Hi. What is in Uzu, Kakashi-sensei? Hinata wondered if she was the only one who was in the dark. Uzu Shiogakure was the Uzumaki clan's birthplace and home village. They were not only the village's founding clan, but also the nation's ruling family. Uzu no Kuni was once one of the most powerful shinobi villages. Unfortunately, they lacked the numbers to back up their claim of being the strongest. They were massacred near the end of the Second World War. Kakashi explained everything to the heiress. Hinata's eyes widened in surprise. Naruto's mother was the village's sole survivor. That was only because she was already in Konoha when the village was destroyed. Kakashi went on. Naruto remained silent, trying to force his body to move again. For some reason, the prospect of traveling to his mother's birthplace made him nervous. Sasuke sighed as he noticed the blonde struggling with his own demons. He had expected to be the one struggling. Am I correct in assuming you've been aware of this for some time, Naruto? Finally, Kakashi inquired. The blonde agreed with a numb shake of his head. How long have you known who your mother is? He inquired with genuine interest. He had assumed that the Sandaime had destroyed anything that could be obtained by the public that would link Naruto and Kushina together. Years, the stoic replied. Kakashi gave a nod. Have you informed anyone? Sasuke. The one-word responses were beginning to worry the team as Naruto appeared to be depressed. He looked up, his eyes filled with murderous rage. What does the Sandaime gain from this? I refuse to go near Uzu if he believes he is obtaining clan secrets or something else from my clan. It's bad enough he let them perish. Naruto snapped, causing all 3 of them to recoil at the venom in his tone. The wording confused Kakashi because he had no idea what Naruto was on about. Naruto? What do you mean when you say the Sandaime, let them die? The Jonin inquired, cautiously. Do you recall any Konoha nins dying on the day Uzu was destroyed? Were any deaths reported that day? No, there weren't any. The death records of all shinobi in the village are open to the public for lineage research. Nobody died the day Uzu was destroyed. The Sandaime, however, insists that the red spiral worn by all Chunin and Jonin is in memory of an ally who could not be saved. He never even attempted. Naruto snarled. He was dangerously close to losing control of the chakra of the 9 tails, and he was having difficulty calming himself. Sasuke reached over and drew the blonde into his arms, rubbing his back. He'd lost his cool many times in the past, and Sasuke and Hinata had always been the only ones who could calm him down. When they returned to Konoha, he made a mental note to teach Hinata how. I see. He did want scrolls, but if we don't find any, he won't be able to have them. Furthermore, because they are clan scrolls, he would need your permission to access them. Kakashi reasoned, causing the blonde to laugh. He'd forgotten about that hiccup in the Sandame's plans. I'm sorry, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto apologized, his rage fading. When they arrived at Uzu, Kakashi made a mental note to question him. Hopefully, the boy will open up at that point. He'd never intended to give the Sandame any of the Uzumaki clan scrolls in the first place. He had tried to convince Kakashi that the scrolls would be used to strengthen the village, but Kakashi believed that the village had no right to know about a dead clan. They should, in his opinion, let sleeping dogs lie. Who knows what kind of trouble they'd be in if they woke that dog up. The team nodded and continued on their way. The journey would be lengthy. A few days later. After 3 days of travel, the team arrived at a small port on the coast of Hai no Kuni. Kakashi couldn't help but smile as he turned to face his students. Despite his initial outrage at learning that the Sandame had planned to steal the Uzumaki clan's secrets, Naruto appeared relatively calm and excited. We will spend the night in an inn before boarding a boat to Uzu. I'll work on arranging transportation, so you three can rest. If you want to explore, go ahead, but don't make a scene, okay? Kakashi informed the 3 genin, who smiled at the prospect of a bed and a shower. As they parted, Kakashi began the difficult task of locating transportation. Even after being assured that they would have safe passage, many shipowners refused to go anywhere near the whirlpools of Uzu. Many believed that the island had been cursed by the Uzumaki as a result of Konoha's betrayal, and Kakashi's status as a Konoha nin didn't help. It appeared that the ports that had previously worked with Uzu had not forgotten the vow that Naruto had said was broken. Naruto, on the other hand, had quickly showered and changed into more comfortable clothing for the purpose of sightseeing. He didn't wait for a response when he called out to his team that he was leaving, and he left the inn excited about what he might find. He couldn't help but notice the strange looks he received as he walked down the streets. It didn't take long for him to realize that the stares were directed at his headband. It appears that some people recall how the Sandame betrayed the Uzumaki. It's nice to know I'm not alone, he thought to himself. He then noticed a small shop off to his right that sold some rather lovely handcrafted jewelry. As he entered the shop, he noticed the atmosphere shift quickly and smirked inwardly. I had no idea I was back in Konoha. Is there anything I can do for you, Shinobi-san? When a shopkeeper inquired, Naruto couldn't help but notice the sarcastic honorific that had been bestowed upon him. I was hoping to find something for someone I'm interested in asking out on a date. She is very important to me, and I have no idea what to get her for a present. Naruto admitted his guilt. I see. Most of the time, you want something that reflects her personality or is associated with something she enjoys. Or something symbolic to the two of you. In response, he said. He was irritated by the Hidden Leaf's arrogance in claiming the spiral and painting it red after they had betrayed the Uzumaki. He wasn't that old, but he remembered the smoke rising from the island and the sailors waiting for a force from Konoha to Uzu that never arrived. He had never forgiven one of his best friends for being an Uzumaki. There was one in his shop now. He was trying to be professional while putting his bias aside, but the more he looked at the headband, the more he wanted to scream. Hama. She enjoys pressing flowers. We both like foxes and she is very gentle. After a brief pause, Naruto responded. I suppose the way she moves reminds you of a graceful raven. As an afterthought, he added. Well, I believe you might find what you're looking for in the case. He pointed the blonde to the indicated case. Thanks. Naruto chirped and hopped over to investigate. Despite having married Hinata in the future, they had been in the midst of a war, so he had never purchased gifts. He was too preoccupied with trying to save his friends' lives. Hinata didn't seem to mind as long as he got home safely. How long will you and your team be here? The shopkeeper inquired, trying to maintain a neutral tone of voice. He was curious as to how long the village would have to put up with their presence. Until the morning, or however long it takes to find someone to take us out to my mother's homeland, Naruto replied truthfully. His response, on the other hand, had piqued the interest of everyone who had heard it. Where is your mother's homeland? Yeah. My mother was born in Uzu, and I'm excited to see it for the first time. That is, if we are accepted. He responded while still staring at the screen. He knew he was taking a high-risk gamble, but he had no choice. He knew Kakashi would have a difficult time finding someone based on the looks he had received while walking through the village. That's not very amusing. How dare you spread such a filthy lie? Taking a step forward, one irate customer yelled. Uzumaki Kushina was my mother's name. When she was about 8 years old, she left the village and went to Konoha at the request of her great-aunt. Because of the Kyuubi attack, she died 12 years ago on the same night I was born. I apologize, Kurama. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. He finally turned, leaving everyone in the shop stunned. There were rumors that Kushina was indeed pregnant. Is the boy telling the truth? Every Uzumaki has red hair. The same customer sputtered angrily. In that regard, my father's genes triumphed. I inherited my father's hair color. Naruto retorted. Show me. The shopkeeper demanded abruptly. How? I don't have a genetic test to show for it. Even if one existed, I couldn't keep it because of the Sandame. He inquired openly. One of my friends was an Uzumaki, and he left some of his belongings here in case he ever needed them. Primarily clothing. The scroll he sealed them in, on the other hand, bears a blood seal. It can only be opened by an Uzumaki. If you can open it, I'll accompany you across. He posed a challenge. Fine, bring the scroll, Naruto replied, not backing down as everyone expected when faced with the prospect of proving his genetics. The scroll was placed on the counter less than a minute later, and Naruto walked over slowly. He smeared the blood on the scroll with his thumb and undid the seal. Nobody moved, and nobody dared to breathe. Right in front of them was an Uzumaki. When do you want to go, and how many people will accompany you? He inquired quietly. Naruto smiled as his bet paid off. How about 9 a.m. tomorrow? There are 3 more. Kakashi couldn't help but feel his heart pounding in response to the previous day as the ship left early the next morning. He had had no luck finding a captain willing to take them to Uzu, but Naruto had done it in an hour. When he inquired about it, the blonde admitted to taking a very risky gamble. Despite this, he was proud of the boy for his efforts and the way he had managed to bridge the gap between the Konoha nin and the sailors in that port, if only temporarily. He had the genin practice some safe chakra control exercises for the duration of the trip, and the sea breeze was refreshing. He could only hope that he would be able to gain Naruto's trust soon. The Sandame was putting pressure on Naruto and Sasuke to figure out why they seemed to change so quickly. Especially so close to the incident with the Forbidden Scroll. It would be a long journey. Naruto, Sasuke and Hinata sat on the opposite side of the ship from Kakashi, staring intently at the water balloon they were holding. The goal was to add fire chakra to the water, just enough to warm it but not enough to pop the balloon. Unfortunately, Naruto and Sasuke had already melted the balloon 5 times, and Hinata kept rapidly boiling the water. So quickly that the balloon popped, spraying water hot enough for tea everywhere. Because they were trying to get the elemental chakra to the water without disturbing the container, the rubber layer between their hands and the balloon was making it difficult. Arg. Kakashi-sensei, there has to be some trick to this. Can't you give us a hint? Yelled Naruto, frustrated. The Jonin only smiled at them and returned to his book. I know, Dobi. I'm struggling over here as well, and I used to think I had pretty good control over my fire chakra. Sasuke sighed and leaned back. Hinata kept staring at the balloon until she exclaimed triumphantly. The men looked over to see the water gently boiling and the balloon still intact. How did you do that? Shrieked Naruto, stunned. The heiress flushed and turned to face her teammates. First channel your chakra into the balloon, then change its nature after it has merged with the water, and then simply raise the concentration until the water begins to boil, she instructed. Both time travelers blinked 3 times at her before screaming in frustration at the simple solution they had overlooked. They, too, completed the exercise in a matter of minutes. Good. Now keep trying until it only takes 5 or less seconds, Kakashi said, much to the chagrin of the genin. They returned to work, nodding in acknowledgement. In thought, the captain looked over at the jonin. While he appeared to be far too laid back and somewhat irresponsible, Naruto-san seemed to genuinely respect him. As a result, he found himself reluctantly respecting the jonin. While it appeared that Sandaime had an ulterior motive for sending them to Uzu, the jonin appeared to have no intention of carrying out his orders. Similarly, the jonin appeared to have his own agenda for visiting Uzu. Shaking his head, he refocused his attention. Uzu's whirlpools were notorious for swallowing any vessel that came too close. There was only one safe passage for anyone who didn't know the seals for releasing the security, and he was one of only 2 who knew it. He had no idea how the invaders got onto Uzu, but he was determined to find out one day. His father checked the other ship captain who knew the route immediately after hearing the news of the invasion and discovered that he was still in the hospital, in a coma. He was in the same place he had been for 2 years. He'd refused to tell a group of pirates how to get to Uzu ever since. It would have been impossible to find the information without a Yamanaka, and as far as anyone knew, there had never been a Yamanaka in the hospital. His father had taught him the route and forced him to take it repeatedly until he had memorized the pattern. That was the last thing his father had ever taught him. We'll be there in an hour, he told his passengers. It had been nearly 3 hours since they had left, and he was eager to return to the once magnificent island. He hadn't been to Uzu since his last trip with his father because he hadn't needed to go there. It was a 4-hour journey, but it was well worth it. He just hoped the boy wasn't overly optimistic. On the island, there was no one. Most likely, the area had already been picked clean. Whatever he was looking for was most likely no longer there. Naruto's heartbeat quickened slightly as he realized he'd be landing in his ancestral homeland in just 1 hour. He had no idea what to expect when he arrived. Corpses? Buildings destroyed? Who are the living? He was struggling to keep his imagination in check as endless possibilities raced through his mind. Kurama had told him that the clan library should still be intact because it had been guarded by extremely powerful seals to prevent theft. He was certain that he wanted to get to that point. He didn't know nearly enough to decode the Edo Tensei, and he'd need to if he wanted to avoid as many casualties as possible. The shinobi paused their activities and moved to the front of the boat as the island approached. They couldn't help but stare in awe as the captain skillfully navigated between the whirlpools, safely bringing them to port. The port was in much better condition than Naruto had anticipated, and he stared as he saw various ships from other countries rotting in the water. It was obvious that whoever stepped foot on the island's shores did not leave that day. He moved through the docks and into the village, taking care not to set off any remaining traps. The skeletons, an echo of previous lives, lay on the ground, some with weapons still embedded in them. Many of the skeletons had headbands wrapped around their heads or lying next to them on the ground. Some were as young as newborns and were killed before they even had a chance. The invaders had clearly come with the intent of committing genocide. Stay sharp, the security system is probably still active, and the Uzumaki were master trap builders, the captain said. He had no desire to travel further into the island and witness more destruction, so he returned to his ship. Before he knew it, there was a replica of the blonde smiling next to him. "I'll walk you back so you don't accidentally trigger any traps. I wouldn't want anyone getting hurt because of me," the clone said as he walked away with the captain. The real Naruto looked around and couldn't help but feel saddened by the deaths of people he'd never met. Perhaps that was why he was sad. He had never met them but could have. If only the Sandaime had sent backup, he grumbled. "I'm going to try to find the security system and disable it so we can walk freely," he said as he made his way to the center of the island. Kakashi let him go, knowing how difficult it must have been for the blonde to see so many people he could have called family but never did. "Did you really let all of these people die when you could have saved them?" He reflected on the elderly man. Kakashi had the impression that there were far more skeletons in Konoha's closet than he realized. The skeletons will emerge one day. "So, Hiruzen, what are your plans?" "It will be the end of Konoha," wished Kakashi. Even more skeletons littered the path through the village center, all of them varying in age and gender. Many of them were killed while fleeing the attackers. Obviously, none of them survived. Naruto snorted as he remembered the redhead who had been working for Orochimaru. I believe it was Karen. Did her family flee, or were they not in the village when the destruction occurred, as Mom was? He thought to himself. He would stop every now and then to dismantle the traps he discovered and pocket the useful supplies. He sealed in another scroll the ones that were too old or would no longer work to keep everyone else safe. He had to entrust it to his relatives, who were skilled trap makers. Only he comes close. The fox inside burst out laughing at the thought. What's the big deal? There isn't much. Simply put, they would have said the same thing. They were very proud of their trap-making abilities. However, I must concur. You are superior to them. You can see the traps. Many of the Uzumaki inadvertently set off their own pranks because they forgot where they were and couldn't spot them in time. The Nine Tails mused, making Naruto chuckle. Kurama made him turn to look at what appeared to be an old gardening shed not far away. There. That is the location of the security center. Are you certain? It appears to be a gardening shed. That's part of the appeal. How many people would consider looking in a gardening shed to disable village security? Naruto had to admit that the fox was correct and entered the building with caution. While the structure appeared to be collapsing in on itself from the outside, the inside told a different story. The structure was intact, and the only thing in the room was a seal on the floor. If someone looked in here, I think they'd notice, Naruto said, his sweat dripping. The fact that you can see it means that the seals on the building recognize you as an Uzumaki by blood. Nobody else would notice this. they'd see a collapsing gardening shed and a slew of rusted tools. That was a brilliant idea. When the door slammed shut, Naruto was thinking about implementing it for the barrier division after retaking the Hokage throne. What the fuck? He yelled as he ran over. The door wouldn't budge no matter how hard he pushed, and it was clear that he wasn't going anywhere. Before he could try to find another way out, the seal began to glow and all that could be seen was a wall of white. Naruto soon learned nothing more. Do you think Naruto-kun is okay? Hinata asked, looking down at the skeleton of an infant who appeared to have died clutching a small bear. He'll be fine, Sasuke assured. Within 2 seconds, a massive pillar of light rose into the sky from the direction Naruto had fled.
Sasuke sighed and realized he needed to revise his statement.
If trouble doesn't find him. The shinobi exchanged glances and dashed towards the light, hoping Naruto hadn't been hit by one of the island's security measures. When they discovered the blonde, he was crumpled in the middle of the courtyard. His eyes were shut and his breathing was shallow. Hinata sighed in relief after a quick check for injuries. He's just unconscious, but something drained a lot of his chakra, she explained as she drew the blonde's head into her lap. Sasuke let out a sigh of relief and rolled his eyes. Dobi, you never make it easy for me to look after you, do you? Kakashi narrowed his eyes but said nothing. Is there anyone else on the island you can see with your Byakugans, Hinata? No one that I can see in my field of vision, she said quickly. She'd even turned her head so she wouldn't be caught off guard if someone was in her blind spot. She was quite pleased with the range of her dojutsu now that she had improved. Sasuke sat down, rubbed his eyes, and looked tiredly at the Jonin. Make sure the Sandame didn't put any listening seals on you. You never know with that senile fool. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at the command but followed through anyway. He had a feeling he was about to get the explanation he was looking for. He sat down and looked at Sasuke quietly after finding none. Naruto and I have a lot of secrets that we can't share with you right now. It isn't because you aren't trustworthy, Kakashi-sensei, but we need to know how far the Sandame is willing to go to get the information that he wants on us. I know he has been pressuring you to find out why we are different, but at the moment we can't tell you. It depends on how things go until the next Chunin exam held in. Does Hinata know? He asked, still suspicious. Just the basics, Hinata explained. Naruto-kun said there were things I'd be better off not knowing, and I believe him. He had no choice but to tell me after I confronted him the day we graduated. I know they need all the help they can get, and they need as many people they can trust as possible. We can trust their instincts, she said confidently. Do I have to wait until the Chunin exam to get my answers? It depends on how things go, Sasuke said. The Jonin nodded, temporarily satisfied, and busied himself with setting up camp for the night. He was aware that the blonde would be gone for some time. Naruto awoke to the sound of birds singing and Sasuke cooking over the campfire. His head hurt and he just wanted to sleep again. What occurred? You knocked yourself out trying to find the security center, Dobi, Sasuke grumbled. Naruto groaned as he remembered what had happened to him the day before. As he tried to recall what happened after the door slammed shut, images of seals and blueprints flashed before his eyes, exacerbating his headache. He groaned and grabbed his head. Please tell me you can do something about this, Kurama, he begged his lifelong companion. We're working on it. I need to isolate the images and then try to arrange them in a logical order. I know the key to discovering everything you seek is right here. We just need to find it. I mistook that for the security center. It was. Perhaps the seals reasoned that it would be easier to figure things out on their own. Or the center operates differently than I expected. It's possible that all of Uzu's knowledge is stored in the same way that the security maps are. The Nine Tails responded. Great. It took Kyuubi nearly 4 hours to sort through the information that had been crammed into Naruto's head, and they had already eaten lunch. Alright, I got it. Follow me, Naruto said, finally deciphering the lost diagram. Uzu's layout had been far more complicated than he had anticipated. He began weaving a rapid set of hand seals as he walked to the fountain in the center of the village. He finished by placing one hand on the ground and cutting the other open and placing it inside the fountain. As the blood and chakra mingled, an elaborate seal appeared, wrapping around the stunned shinobi and continuing out into the distance.
I hope you guys like the video. Please leave a like and subscribe my channel. Thank you.